Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'll let everyone in the lobby in, and then it will be over to you, Chair.
Thank you.
There we go. Everyone in the lobby has been invited into the main meeting, and the recording started.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Zena. Good afternoon and welcome to the Rural and Community Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Ray Wootton, Chairman of this committee. Please be aware that although this meeting is taking place virtually, councillors will still be visible, so normal meeting standards and behaviours will apply. Please make sure you are against a stationary background and keep movement around the room during the meeting to a minimum to avoid visual distraction. Please ensure that your mobile phone is turned off or set to silent. If you wish to ask a question, please use the meeting chat function, which will be monitored by my Vice Chairman, Councillor Sarah Trotter. Please do not use the chat function for any questions, comments or discussion, just to indicate that you wish to speak. And finally, this meeting will be recorded and the recording is retained in accordance with the Council's document retention policy. I'd like to welcome two new members to the committee, Councillor Linda Wootton and Councillor Philip Knowles, who are replacing Councillor Stoke and Councillor Mills. I hope that you both enjoy being part of this committee. I'd like to place on record my thanks to Councillor Penny Mills and Councillor Ian Stokes for their service and commitment to this committee over the past year and a half. I'd like to let members know that I have received requests to speak from Councillor Jackie Smith, Ward Member for St Wolframs, on agenda item 11, and Councillor Charmaine Morgan on agenda item 8. I thank you both for your advance notification request to speak. Now we move on to the agenda. Item 1, comments from members of the public. Zena, are there any members of the public wishing to speak?
I have not received notification from any members of the public. If any members of the public wish to speak, they may indicate in the chat box. No one appears to have indicated.
Thank you very much indeed, Zena. Item 2, register of attendance and apologies for absence. Can I ask Zena West to do a roll call, and members please answer by saying present and ensure your camera is switched on. Zena?
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Ray Wootton?
Present.
Councillor Sarah Trotter?
Present.
Councillor Mike Exton?
Present.
Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cavery-Brown? I'll come round to her again at the end. Councillor Philip Knowles?
Present.
Councillor Amanda Wheeler?
Hello, I'm present. In the chat box, a member of the public has said they want to speak as well.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Linda Wootton? Councillor Linda Wootton?
Present.
Thank you. I do know that Councillor Rosemary Cavery-Brown was having some technical issues and she is hoping to join us shortly.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, now we've had the roll call. Mr. Phil Gadd has shown that he wishes to ask a question.
Mr. Gadd, you are free to speak at the first item on the agenda, comments from members of the public, but not on item 11. So if you wish to...
Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you.
If you wish to speak, go ahead. Do you wish to speak, Mr. Gadd?
Mr. Chairman, it seems that his connection may have been lost.
Right, thank you. We'll come back to it if he comes back. I see that Councillor Dilks wishes to speak. Councillor Dilks.
You're very kind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to register my attendance in your meeting, and I would like to speak on both reports that you're going to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to the agenda for item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any members who wish to declare a declaration of interest? Bear in mind that you only need to declare a pecuniary interest. Are there any requests to declare that interest? None recorded. Thank you very much indeed.
Mr. Chairman, Phil Gadd appears to have come back into the meeting, so if he's able to speak now, you said you would come back if he came back in. He appears to be back into the meeting now.
That's fine. Hello, Mr. Gadd. Can you hear me? Yes.
Can you hear me?
You're breaking up a bit.
Okay, is that any better?
Not really. You sound like you're talking on top of a tower. But
okay. I want to talk about agenda item 11.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to make a statement regarding agenda item 11, the Riverside inquiry. I've been involved in highlighting hot water and heating issues at Riverside since December 2016. And it's not been very easy to get anyone to listen or to respond to any complaints we raised. The residents of Riverside have spent several years with intermittent or failing hot water and heating, not for an odd day, but for months on end. Temporary heating or hot water should be a short-term fix. Temporary lasted nearly a year in 2019 at Riverside, with oil-filled radiators for heating in winter and no hot water for a bath. I had to continually raise and revisit the issue over 3 years with SKDC. I had to involve the press, MPs, councillors, and finally resorted to asking continued questions at full council meetings to get things done. I was met with disdain, sometimes ignored. People failed to reply or respond. Emails or requests were delayed. Sometimes I was given incorrect information. I finally had to resort to FOI requests at one stage to get the true information. SKDC are probably the largest landlord in South Lincolnshire, and the Riverside report shows that both SKDC and the political administration failed to take on board to act on not only my complaints over many years, but many others within the complex as well. Many of the issues I raised at full council meeting are now highlighted in the report for action. I now understand we are changing the hot water heating system back to where we started in 2016 with individual hot water storage tanks for each property. So I have to ask the question, why remove the tanks in the first place when it appears the real issue was with the underground pipework and contamination in the system? The replacement HCUs installed by SKDC in 2016 were virtually obsolete and end-of-line production type ones. I understand spares and replacement parts are now expensive, difficult to obtain, and hence the plan to replace them all. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, I'll admit that, but I feel this whole issue starts with the removal of the storage tanks and replacing them with the HDU system in 2016, and what investigations and technical advice was requested before that initial replacement project began. I can only hope SKDC take full notice of this excellent report by Julie Pickett and comply with all its findings. Also, that in future a more open, honest and proactive response is made by SKDC to concerns and complaints that are raised by all tenants, and that the confrontational issues I became involved with, both from council and councillors, are a thing of the past. And finally, I refer to a local newspaper article in response to my complaints from the 1st of December 2016, which states, an SKDC spokesman said, "We are aware of the issues at the Riverside complex and will be on site December the 2nd, 2016 to make further assessment and repair as necessary." And just to confirm, they're still there 4 years later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gadden. Thank you for your comments and your questions and views. I'm sure that if you stay online at item 11, you'll get a reply to many of those questions that you put forward. If you don't, would you please contact me and I'll make sure a reply is sent to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We move on now to item 4, action notes for the meeting held on the 10th of September. This is for accuracy only. So I will go through the notes starting at page 5. Are there any corrections on page 5? Page 6? Page 7? Page 8? Page 9? Page 10? Page 11? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18. If not, I propose that these are a true record of the meeting held on the 10th of September 2020. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mike.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Exton. Zena, could you please ask the members whether they are for the meeting held on the 10th of December, the minutes of the meeting, or against or abstaining?
Certainly. So this is to confirm the action notes from the meeting held on the 10th of September. Councillor Ray Wootton?
For.
Councillor Sarah Trotter?
For.
Councillor Mike Exton?
For.
Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cabery-Brown? Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cabery-Brown?
Yes, for.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Knowles?
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Okay. Councillor Amanda Wheeler?
For.
Councillor Linda Wootton? Councillor Linda Wootton?
Same, because I wasn't there. Thank you.
Okay. They are approved, Chair. Thank you.
Very much indeed. We move on to item 5, which is the action notes updates from the previous meeting. There were 4 actions altogether, and I'm pleased to say they've completed. Do I have any comments from members of the committee who were there at the last meeting on this particular item? No. Thank you very much indeed. I'll move on then to item 6, which is the verbal update from Cabinet members. Unfortunately, Councillor Annie Mason is unwell, so unable to update us on the COVID-19 update. All I want to say is that the news yesterday that 50,000 people had died by catching coronavirus was devastating. Even in Lincolnshire, the numbers catching this disease is increasing. And yesterday at the House Scrutiny Committee, we were told that 300 ULHT staff and 24 LCHS staff are off work due to coronavirus, and abiding by the government's advice back in March. So I will ask if any other Cabinet member wishes to say anything on this particular item.
Mr. Chairman, I can see in the chat box that Carol Drury wishes to make comment update.
Right, thank you. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's all right with you, I have Councillor Mason's update anyway, so I can share it with you if that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Carol.
So following on from what you said, Mr. Chairman, then there has been a rise in cases in South Kesteven. We've had a rise of 68 cases on the previous week. Sadly, across our district, we've had 78 coronavirus-related deaths. That's a death where COVID-19 was mentioned on the death certificate. So people may have had underlying health conditions as well, but they are also attributed to coronavirus. Obviously, since this committee last met, the country's gone into lockdown again. We are continuing to work very closely with Lincolnshire Resilience Forum, which is leading on the county response. You'll be aware that there's no shielding required this time, but anyone identified as being clinically extremely vulnerable has been written to by government advising them to stay home for the period 5th of November to the 2nd of December, and that's advised, not required. Okay. The letter that's gone from government explains that although restrictions are fewer than during the original lockdown, people are advised, except for exercise and medical appointments, to stay home wherever possible, and they are directed to NHS volunteers for support. The letters have gone directly to the individuals and also to parents and carers of children and young people who are also identified as clinically extremely vulnerable. Any child identified as clinically extremely vulnerable is required to stay away from school for this period of time. Just for general information, there are around 31,000 people across the whole of Lincolnshire that have been identified as clinically extremely vulnerable. Since the first lockdown, about 1,250 people have been added to that list. Those newly added will all be contacted by the County Council, so they're aware of the support that's available through the Lincolnshire Resilience Forum, through local hubs like ourselves, and through volunteers. Clinically extremely vulnerable people can again register with the National Shielding Service system, which gives them access to priority delivery slots with the 7 major supermarkets, and it also gives them access to prescription delivery for free. Anyone with a delivery slot from last time will still have it from this time, but people are being advised to register on the National Shielding Service system again. Any children that have been identified as clinically extremely vulnerable that would, if they were going to school, get a free school meal, will still get that meal at lunchtime at home, provided by Lincolnshire County Council. From a South Kesteven perspective, our community hub obviously is still active. We are dealing with fewer contacts as people either went back to work or adjusted to the new restrictions. We've had a slight rise in calls, mostly about advice around a variety of things, and queries on whether people will get government food boxes again this time. That's not a service that's available on this occasion. Nevertheless, our support remains in place, and we can be confident that if we need to step the hub back up to full capacity, it's not at the same capacity it was during first lockdown, but if we need to step it back up, we can very easily do that. It will be a simple transition to do that. We've contacted through the hub all of the community and voluntary groups that we've worked with since March to make sure that they're still able to support people on the ground. And I'm pleased to report that they've all said yes, they're still here and they're still able to. One of the main issues across the country is the potential for household transmission of COVID-19. Measures are being put in place to increase awareness and testing. A walk-through testing station is expected to be located in Grantham to supplement the mobile unit that sets itself up at the Mears. People will still have to book to attend for a test, but hopefully it'll be a simple process to encourage more people to get that test. We're also working with colleagues from Public Health to get the message out about the dangers of mixing households. Public Health has produced information leaflets that we're hoping can be distributed by our public health colleagues through our community partners and in food parcels, just to get that message reinforced even more. This information will also be supplied in other languages in appropriate areas of our district to ensure everyone has access to information. That's it from the coronavirus update.
Thank you very much indeed, Carol. That's very kind of you and a very comprehensive update. Could you please pass on my best wishes to the councillor, and please ask her to present a report for the next meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's a question from Councillor Exton in the chat box.
Right, Councillor Exton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carol has basically answered. It was about the testing station for the local area. You know, we haven't got any, and I was just wondering what the position was. Myself being a vulnerable person, I understand you said that there's one probably opening in Grantham. How about south of the county a bit more? You know, Bourne, Deeping, Stamford. Could you give me any details at all?
If it's all right with you, Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that there has been a testing station, one of the national testing stations in South Kesteven throughout since March. It's not here all the time. Obviously, it's one of the ones that comes for a period of time and then goes away. It's always been at the Mears Leisure Centre. There aren't any plans to have one at this moment anywhere else in South Kesteven. We accommodate the requirements of the National Health Service and Public Health. So wherever they determine is the greater risk is where that testing station will go. And actually having one in our district has been a great bonus for, I mean, people have come from all parts of the East Midlands to be tested at our testing station that's happening at the Mears. The one that's expected will be a permanent one. It will stay, but it will be in Grantham. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Carol. Mike, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Carol, do you have any further updates on Councillor Annie Mason?
I can do the others that were on the list, if that is all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, briefly, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of the items we're hopefully going to have those on a future agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one on the list was the anti-racism motion to council. I'll be brief on this one. Members will be aware that the motion was passed at council on the 1st of October to declare that this council is intolerant to racism and will continue to seek to eradicate it, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, hate crime across this district by developing initiatives that are actively inclusive and anti-racist. I can tell you that in the background we've worked on an action plan to address all of the issues that were in the final motion, and with the permission of the chairman we'll bring a report to the next meeting of this committee to let you know not only what we've got in the action plan but where we've got to at that point.
I look forward to that, Carol. Thank you.
Community fund is the next one. A report relating to proposed changes to the criteria of the community fund went to Cabinet on the 13th of October. All the observations and recommendations of this committee were included in that report. Cabinet was in general agreement of the changes and recommendation. There was one challenge from Cabinet on the changes which related to the proposed removal of parish and town councils from the eligibility criteria. Cabinet felt that particularly for the smaller parishes, cutting off this possible funding stream would be detrimental, and so parish and town councils remain eligible. I can pass on that Cabinet was very grateful for the input of this committee. The fund has now reopened for applications. 18 inquiries have been received relating to the community fund to date. All have been responded to and application packs sent as appropriate, and support offered to all contacts. Closing date for this round will be the 4th of December.
Thank you, Carol. I'll be really interested if you could give the committee an update on the homeless partnership, if you've got any information on that at all.
That would be, I think, Councillor Reid to update on, if you don't mind. Okay.
Anything else, Carol?
There was one more item on community policing, but it was just this would just be an overview of the requirement on this overview and scrutiny committee to have at least once a year a community policing update. Obviously, we're restricted at the moment, but it will be on the agenda in future.
We have to, by law, have a crime and disorder meeting, so I'm hoping to get Inspector Gary Stewart to attend and give us an update on the policing issue in our district. Thank you for that, Carol, very much indeed. Can I now call on Councillor Robert Reid to give his update, please?
Good afternoon, Chairman. Can you hear me all right?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Okay, so picking up firstly on the homeless partnership with other districts, I'm going to be as quick as I can on these 7 points because I know you've got a long agenda. Probably the longest one will be the first. So with respect of homeless partnership, the Rough Sleeper Initiative, change for links, we have 13 staff in total working across the 4 districts. Our emergency accommodation will be up and running next week, and we have 3 people already earmarked to go into the HMO to receive intensive support with a view to move onto accommodation being sourced. We are already getting, beyond the report that I received 3 days ago, some excellent results across the districts of people receiving help. Members, I'm sure, and members of the public will be interested to know our particular tranche. SKDC has secured 145,000 for the development stroke refurbishment of 4 privately acquired properties and an initiative support, and an intensive support worker to work long-term with rough sleepers who are unable to sustain independent accommodation, along with £14,000 for short-term solutions such as bed and breakfast. Chairman, that completes my update for the homelessness partnership and indeed the districts.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Reid. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Thank you, Councillor Reid. If not, we'll move on to item 7.
Hang on. I've got all the other bullet points, Chairman. Yeah. Do you want me to run through them and then take questions at the end rather than individually?
Thank you very much. Yes,
I'm keen that time is of the essence this afternoon.
Yes.
So the cold weather payments for homelessness people, this is a government central government funding, which is to support principally bed and breakfast bills and other extra energy costs. If I move on next to the local plan, our submission is in. As is known on the 28th of October, and we obviously await the consultation findings along with everybody else that's been encouraged to contribute through the white paper to the local plan. The external planning review, which most members will recollect, is what we've undertaken with Kratos. The findings have been presented to committee members and officers, and now we are moving into workshops. We shall be making a report to governance and audit on receipt of the report on the 19th, and we shall be reporting back the mechanisms for January, maybe February, and giving you an update again here on the improved ways of delivery of our planning service in 6 months' time. The disabled facility grants Q2, it's good to report that owing to the current COVID restrictions, we have not had to stop the works that go on within people's homes, and particularly for the discharge for additionally, the occupational therapy has continued and hasn't been interrupted with the COVID restrictions. The budget set for this year is 800,000, and you can see by me reporting that 410 has already been spent, that at a 6-month interim basis, we're halfway through the budget. Moving next to housing repairs update. This is particularly sensitive amongst the COVID restrictions, which I have reported in the past, and so therefore it is for me to give you an update today, which I was keen to do. Because of COVID restrictions early on in the year, you will be all remember that jobs for emergency repairs and essential repairs have taken priority. So to tell you, my update is that the jobs outstanding, the number is down as at the October the 31st to 1,635. More importantly, as I speak, we've got 666 of those planned tasks in process. And the COVID restrictions for November haven't hindered us quite the same way as the past. We are allowed to go in to do routine repairs for up to 4 hours. So we are at one point, I think, the repairs managed sadly to get to 2,200. So you can see that we're working down and take the 660 off. And we keep going. We should continue to make good progress on our housing repairs. And takes me on next to the garden maintenance scheme, particularly for our sheltered housing. We've moved that on. We've made good progress in assessing the criteria of looking after the outsides of all our council stock with grounds maintenance, the criteria of increasing the number of visits, seasonally adjusted, and also the length of height of the cuts adjusted. And we shall be also continuing an enhancement to the sheltered garden scheme for those that need that. And we're looking into the regulations of those that receive the sheltered garden schemes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think I've covered all of the updates. I know that they're updates during COVID times. I know you'll be cutting these down, but it's good to actually give you a position statement on them all. And I'll take any questions if you permit them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve Councillor. Some very good news there. Sarah, any questions from members?
No, Mr. Chairman, there doesn't appear any in the chat box at the moment on this subject.
Thank you again, Councillor Reid. We're now going to move on to item 7, Mental Health Challenge Workshop. During the start of lockdown in March, cases of mental health have increased. In Lincolnshire, a recent staff survey in another authority highlighted that whilst many welcomed work from home, a large number complained of loneliness and not being able to interact with fellow workers. Stress, anxiety, lack of sleep and low mood being the common complaints among those suffering with mental health. And early intervention can be invaluable. It is proposed to set up a workshop jointly with the Culture Committee to examine what role we can play as an authority to help. Members are also asked to delegate authority to the workshop to make recommendations to the Cabinet, rather than coming back to the committee again. Zena, how many members do we need here?
Apologies, Chair, I had myself on mute there. What was the question?
How many members do we need to volunteer for the mental health workshop jointly with Culture?
I don't think there's a particular number, but I think as many as possible and as many who would like to volunteer. The proposed date and time for the workshop is 2 p.m. on the 10th of December.
Well, I'd like to volunteer for that one, Zena. Okay. Are there any members who wish to volunteer for this workshop?
Yeah, I see, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Wheeler has put...
Councillor Wheeler, thank you very much indeed.
Yes, Councillor Jackie Smith.
And Jackie, thank you, Jackie.
Yeah.
Linda Wotton.
Thank you, Linda.
I would as well, Mr. Chairman, Mike.
Thank you very much, Mike. I think that's nearly most of the committee, apart from...
I'm happy to volunteer if required as well.
Great, thank you very much indeed.
Sorry, Chair, I've noted those names and I'll make sure invites are sent round to those councillors.
Right, thank you. Are members of the committee happy to delegate authority and recommendations to the Cabinet? Anybody against? No? Well, thank you very much, Steve, for volunteering. I'm now going to move on to item 8, which is the Health and Safety Compliance Report, which is on page 21 to 60.
Councillor Wotton, I understand that Councillor Baxter wishes to speak. Apologies.
Right, Councillor Baxter, you're not a member of the committee, but I will allow you to speak. So go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, as is customary at scrutiny committees for non-committee members to participate. My first question is one of procedure. There appear on my device only to be 8 participants in the meeting. How many participants are in the meeting at the moment?
Zena, how many can you see? Because there should be myself, Sarah.
There's, including all members and members of the public and press, I've got 40 participants in the meeting at the moment. So well, I'm not sure what's going on with the display.
Yeah, thank you. It must be an issue with my device. I'm interested in the mental health workshop. And I wanted to ask, is it open to all members?
Yes, if you want to volunteer, that's I'm happy to accept you.
Thank you. I also noticed that your committee is agreeing a date, but so is the Culture and Visitor Economy Committee is also agreeing a date for the same meeting. Theoretically, I suppose they could come up with a different date. But
they could do. Yes, I'm sure that we will get a date between us and circulate those dates to those who volunteered.
Okay. Will there also be an agenda circulated? And may I ask, at this workshop, will there be any presentation from external experts on this subject, or will it be councillors discussing it among ourselves?
Well, it's a good question you raised there, Councillor Baxter, because if I go back to my time serving in the police, I had training on mental health and dealt with many people under 137 Act, Section 137 of the Mental Health Act, which deals with those with psychotics, hallucinations, and they are different, in fact, to what we are talking about today. So you're quite right, there needs to be a remit at the start of that particular workshop.
Yes, and it might be helpful to invite somebody from perhaps a local Mind group or a local mental health charity to address counsellors so that we have a better understanding. My final point is that workshops do not make decisions, and I'm just a little bit concerned about the process by which a workshop, which is not open to the public, is making recommendations to the Cabinet, because I'm not sure that that's the right public scrutiny route, but I'll leave that in your hands.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for volunteering. Are there any further questions, Councillor Trotter?
Mr. Chairman, not on the subject that Councillor Baxter. We're moving on now to 8. There will be some questions, but obviously you will speak first.
Right, thank you very much indeed. If I could draw members' attention to page 21 to 60. Could I call on the Chief Executive, Karen Bradford, to say a few words?
Thank you, Chairman. I do think the Leader of the Council wanted to open and present first on this report. Then I do also think the Cabinet Member, Councillor Robert Reid, also wanted to speak. But if that has changed, I'm quite happy to start the presentation.
No, thank you. I'll go back to Councillor Callum Cook, Leader of the Council. Councillor Cook. Councillor Cook, can you hear me? Councillor Reid, could I ask you to present this item? We can't get hold of Councillor Cook.
Can you hear me, Chairman, all right?
I can, yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, fine. As you are well aware, Chairman, and all members, I've made 2 presentations last week in respect to the health and safety compliance audit. You have the report in front of you. The criteria that we are wishing to present, Karen Bradford, our Chief Executive, has alluded to. She's going to start the presentation. And I have Chris Stratford, the interim Assistant Director for Housing, that has experience of other situations that is on hand to help us with the details. In introducing this, like many members, like I myself, I'm sure residents and members of the public are particularly upset about this report, and they too are very concerned. What I can do is give an assurance is that before we even got this report, I have been working since February, since I took over the portfolio, to actually be improving both the recording, the record keeping, which this criteria is, and indeed our council stock. And I will be actually relating to results when I come to the Riverside report under item 11. So can I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you ask the Chief Executive to start the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Karen, unfortunately we can't get hold of the Leader of the Council, Councillor Cook, at the moment. So could I ask you to start the presentation, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I've just had a message from Callum. He's just going to be about 5 minutes, so he'll join us as soon as he possibly can. He's just on another call. Hopefully members can hear me quite clearly. It is extremely disappointing to have to present this report to you today, Chairman. And before I start, I would like to give my sincere apologies to the Council on behalf of the Council to all our tenants. The report in front of you today is the findings of the housing compliance audit that Councillor Cook, myself and Councillor Reid commissioned in June last year. The drivers for the presentation or the request of this report was concerns had been raised. I had reviewed the situation with the Riverside position. I'd come in as a new chief exec in March of that year, and I was not happy with some of the answers that I was given by previous staff that were employed by the authority. In June, we appointed RSM, our external auditors, to undertake the compliance review. They undertook a desktop review, speaking to members of staff, because of course we were still in lockdown at this point. And as attached to the report are the key findings of that report. On receipt of that report, we have as a council appointed Chris Stratford, who has got experience through previous authorities of taking action and driving through improvement plans to improve housing services. Chris is on the call today and will field any direct technical questions. What was an extreme concern to me was the fact that the report had no assurances. That is why it is most important that it's reported, and we're being transparent about the findings of this report and bringing it forward to this committee today, and then it's also going on to Audit and Governance Committee next week. The report itself is very detailed, it's very clear on where the non-compliance areas are. Because of non-compliance, in consultation with the Cabinet of the authority, I did self-refer us to the social housing regulator. They are the government agency that govern to make sure that tenant safety is at the highest priority, tenants' engagement is important, and that our systems and processes are fit for purpose. Clearly, as I sit here in front of you today, our systems are not fit for purpose. We are non-compliant. Therefore, we need to look forward. We need to develop a key action plan, an improvement plan to drive forward improvements in this area. We have established a governance process now where myself, the leader of the council, the cabinet member for housing, and Chris Stratford, my interim assistant director, will meet on a weekly basis to monitor and drive improvements in this area. Members, I'm sure, will soon be able to see a copy of the improvement plan that has been recently shared today with the social housing regulator. Therefore, I'm reassuring you, Chairman, that action is clearly being taken. A risk log is in place, actions are being monitored, contracts are being let, and work is being undertaken. I do believe that we will hear further once in a period of time by the social housing regulator. They will inform us as an authority as if we are compliant or non-compliant. And once we've received that letter, we will then go into a formal intervention process with the government agency. Not predetermining that decision, but I think we can all see that with the non-compliant report that we have in front of us, it's extremely important that we work with the government agency and our teams to bring forward improvements in compliance across our housing stock. So I'm pleasantly reassured that we've got the right team in place. We've set up an internal team. We've brought resources from different areas of the council to bring forward to make sure that actions are undertaken with the right skill set in the team. We've appointed a new head of technical services who is driving the compliance side of it in reference to gas and electrical certification, lift inspections, and making sure that our records are compliant. I'm quite happy at that point to take any questions. I don't know if Councillor Reid wants to add anything further, or Councillor Cook is actually on the call as we sit here today.
Thank you very much indeed, Chief Executive. Councillor Reid, do you wish to add anything further?
Thank you, Chairman. Not at this moment. Has our leader joined us yet, or are we still awaiting his
return?
We're still awaiting for his return. What I can add is an assurance of the action plan, of the improvement plan, of the risk analysis. As I alluded to earlier, I didn't actually wait for this report to be actually doing quite a lot of implementations in any event. And so to that end, from my own point, it's no good me looking for either shame or blame. I'm simply working through a process of what we need to make our compliance complete. At the same time, I am working through a revised programme of works over our entire council's housing stock, particularly our sheltered accommodation, and I have aligned, or I'm in the process of realigning the budget for future house building for the necessity of meeting that demand as well. So thank you, Chair. I think I'm happy to listen to debate. I don't wish to take up time to stop that happening. And we have Chris Stratford for the technical up-to-date situation to be able to be fully factual, hopefully to any questions that come. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think we'll go straight to Chris Stratford, Interim Assistant Director Housing, to update us, and then we'll take all questions at the end. So, Chris, over to you.
Okay, just a very brief update. As Karen said, we referred ourselves to the regulator. That has meant that we've already had one meeting with the regulator that took place on Monday. That was quite a positive meeting, I think, in that it took us through the variety of issues we need to address. It also touched upon the specifics around Riverside, which I know we'll talk about separately later. So we are aware of what we need to do, and today the Chief Executive has signed off the letter to the regulator updating on critical issues around our compliance status as is, and as she has already indicated, the progress we've made on the improvement plan. So all of those things are in place. Just in terms of the specifics on the action plan itself, I hope you can see on the screen now just an indication of those items that particularly are of concern to us.
Chris, we can.
Yeah, you can see that. Good. Especially those relate to items, as Councillor Reid has already said, in respect of the sheltered housing schemes. So we are working through sheltered housing in a logical way around those critical items of concern. And as you can see in front of you there, those are the ones that are being worked on as we speak, in terms of trying to improve where we can those matters of compliance concern. We're also very much aware of some issues, particularly in respect of those core compliant matters that touch upon fire risk assessments, electrical certification compliance, and so on. And those two, fire risk assessments and electrical certification, are our primary focus at the moment in respect of core compliance matters, mainly because our fire risk assessments are out of date, none are in place at the present time, and that does expose us and obviously residents to a very unsatisfactory position in terms of being able to ensure that we are fully up to date with the regulatory requirements around those particular matters. So we are procuring those at the present time. They're on with being procured, as you can see, and we hope to get those in place, the new ones, and they will be different type fire risk assessments, so that we're more up to date with the capacity of the buildings to withstand fire as we move forward with those inspections in the early part of next year. Electrical certification is another one. We've got about 3,000 properties where we've got up-to-date periodic inspection reports, but we're not sure that there is up-to-date certification accompanying those periodic inspections, and some work around the records at the present time is currently underway. But we suspect that probably in the region of about 3,500 properties have no up-to-date certification at all. So that work needs to commence in terms of inspection and issuing those certificates as quickly as possible. The council is just about to receive the contract, also the tender back for a rewiring contract, which includes electrical certification and inspection processes as part of that contract. We will go through that and obviously commission that contract as soon as we possibly can to enable that to happen. And again, we've given the regulator our assurance that that will happen. Other issues around Legionella management and asbestos management, they're not so bad at the moment. There are elements of reporting and management of information which could be greatly improved, but we're satisfied that broadly speaking, the work around those has continued and appears to be in place to a larger extent than with electrical certification and with FRAs. Gas compliance is good. It's running at about 98%, which is pretty standard for most local authorities and RPs at the moment, given the impact of COVID. We would hope to get to 100% compliance by the new year, and there is already a strategy in place for catch up around those types of compliant issues. And so those things are in hand as well. We have provided, as I say, an improvement plan to the regulator today. That will be circulated to all members very shortly, so you'll be able to see the sort of higher level indication of what is happening, but that will give you a much better appreciation. I hope in just touching upon those items that are critically important, without wishing to go into any more detail unless members wish me to do that, I think that's about as far as I can go with the update. There's just one final point. New IT around being able to monitor compliance issues is critical for us. We're in the process of getting that done. We hope to have that commissioned and installed by January 21 at the latest. I think that's all I have to say at this moment in time, Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before I go into questions, Chris, I'd like you to update this committee at a future meeting, and in fact an ongoing commitment to make sure that all these problems are resolved in future.
Absolutely happy to do that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'm going to open up now to questions from members of the committee. Councillor Trotter, do I have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll do them in order that they've been flagged up. A question from Councillor Exton, please.
Thank you very much, Steve. Councillor Exton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is regarding, with all the extra work this report has going to bring forward, and also the backlog of repairs to the housing, have we got enough existing staff to carry out these repairs, or are we engaging outside contractors to bring everything up to date?
I'm happy to answer that.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think in terms of the workload, you're right. I mean, clearly there is an increase in workload, but I think the Chief Executive indicated right from the start, we have now formed, if you like, an officer group that's now responsible for managing and driving these processes forward. Now, there are, without doubt, procurement requirements as we go through this process. I've just mentioned to you about the rewiring contract that needs to be commissioned and enabled to make sure that we catch up with the electrical certification issues. That will fall as a project. The work around that will fall primarily on that contractor. So whilst we will organise it, manage it, project manage it, and ensure we're getting the information back, that specific workload is a contractor workload, and it is not something that should impact significantly on the internal resources that we've got. What I would say as well is that in many instances, a lot of the workload that we're having to deal with, and I'm talking about the administration of these particular problems, but also the work planning around how we manage compliance generally, is made a lot worse because we don't have an infrastructure around IT that enables us to work efficiently and effectively. And I think one of the biggest things that will make a significant difference to people's ability to be effective is the report that you received just this month at Cabinet around rationalising contracts where we can, so we're reducing our project management call on individual officers, and more importantly, the IT infrastructure in terms of the new compliance software that we're hoping to commission and have ready by January. They will make very, very substantial differences to the way that we work and how we can deploy staff. And I'm satisfied that whilst there may be some pinch points which we can manage at the appropriate time, we do have the resource. We should be able to do what we're being asked to do. And with the technology and different ways of working, we should be able to do that and report back, as I've said, the improvements that we need to reflect.
Can I just make a quick comment, Mr. Chairman? I wait with anticipation on your report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I note that the Chief Executive wishes to respond to Councillor Exeter's question, and also that we now have Councillor Kellen Cook, the Leader of the Council, with us. So over to the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Exton, for your question. If I can also further reassure you, we've identified a project manager to go and assist the team. We've got members of the transformation team here at South Kesteven that's joined the housing team to drive the improvement plan. We've got, as Chris said, we've got contractors. We do have to follow a procurement route. However, we are looking to reduce the procurement process down due to the emergency and the importance of the fire risk assessments. That may mean that as Chief Exec that I take an emergency decision which then would be reported to the next formal meeting of the council. So Chris is currently our Assistant Director, but due to the seriousness of this, Chris is now reporting directly into me in the structure. So please be reassured that officers and resources are taking this as a priority.
Thank you, Chief Executive, very much indeed. Now can I welcome Councillor Kellen Cook, Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Brilliant. Sorry I was unavailable, I was just on the telephone. I'd just like to make a short statement, then obviously I'll be here for the rest of the meeting as well. I think we can all admit that the findings of the reports today make incredibly difficult reading. They have highlighted clear failings in the processes relating to our housing service, and I would like to say on behalf of South Kesteven District Council that I am sorry. And I would like to apologise unreservedly to all of our tenants who have been impacted by this. The priority of the council is and will always be our residents and tenants, and we have taken direct action in response to the findings of these reports. We are working closely with tenants to support them and ensure these issues are never repeated. In terms of the housing audit report, this was commissioned by myself and Councillor Reid after we raised concerns with the Chief Executive, who also had concerns shortly after she took up her role. We are taking direct action in response to the findings and working closely with the regulator of social housing, as I know Chris Stratford will have informed you. And we will be providing you with regular updates going forward. Open and honest communication with tenants has also been at the heart of our approach. And I know this is particularly key in terms of the housing portfolio holder, Councillor Robert Reid. We have a dedicated team to respond to questions and support tenants throughout this process. And what I hope this provides is clear reassurance that I, alongside Councillor Reid and our Chief Executive, are determined to tackle any challenges we face head on. Our focus is driving forward significant improvements to our housing service for our tenants. And for that, of course, that will take all of our work, as we all represent in our wards residents within our own social homes. So once again, can I just apologise unreservedly on behalf of the council for the failings that we are now having to deal with following us commissioning that report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Trotter, who is our next speaker from our committee?
Councillor Philip Knowles has a question.
Thank you, and welcome again, Councillor Knowles. Your question.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Obviously, I'm new to this committee, and what I'm asked, I've got a couple of questions, but they're not meant in any censorious way at all. They're not meant in any way that. They're just questions that I wish to ask. I noted that the housing maintenance, improvement and repairs was part of the remit of this committee. And clearly we've had a report which is unfortunate, and was unfortunate. It's a poor one. And I asked the question, first of all, would there have been any possibility of this committee being able to identify failures that were taking place in advance of this report? What sort of information should we get, or did we get, which might have identified a failure, an issue at an early stage? I'm sure over the next few months this whole issue will get intense scrutiny from many sources and from all sorts of committees and so on. But when things presumably do get back to normal, should we learn anything from what we didn't have before? What information or checks should we have in order to make sure that we can start to identify problems should they exist in the future? Are there any other reports? Are there anything else we should do as a committee here that can help prevent this sort of thing happening again? Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Knowles. I mean, you are right. We are a scrutiny committee. And to the champion the people, and also to make a difference if possible. I'm going to go back to Councillor Robert Reid to see if he can give us an update on the housing repairs. Councillor Reid.
You'd like me to give you an update on housing repairs, Chairman?
On ensuring that the committee has full information so we can fully scrutinise at each meeting.
Yes, thank you. You broke up, but I think I got that. Yes, I've got every intention of coming back with updates of the improvement plan, which we've alluded to. In fact, I'm quite comfortable to publish to members the improvement plan that we have. It would be too lengthy and to sort of it wouldn't be easy for me to verbally present, but I'm quite happy to do that. I'm quite happy that I'll be able to give updates like I do on on other topics where the improvement plan is concerned.
Good, thank you very much indeed. Zena, I seem to have lost my screen, most of my screen. Could you have a look, please, and investigate? Philip Knowles, did you have a further question?
No, just a quick comment on that. The sort of thing I'm thinking that we should be doing is identifying as a committee information and checklists, if you like, of things that have happened rather than just a report of what is happening, or things, outcomes, so that we can monitor it from time to time as a routine in this committee. As you say, it's a scrutiny committee, and was it a failure? I'm not saying it was a failure at all, but a failure of the committee not to have identified some of these problems in the future. Perhaps we weren't looking for them, perhaps we didn't have the information. What checks and balances should we have in order to make sure we're on the ball in future? That's the point. And I'm not asking for an answer now, but that's the sort of thing I think we ought to be looking for. I'm sorry to be a nuisance, yeah.
Happy to assist if I can, Chair. A little bit further.
I've got the Chief Executive, Karen, wishes to speak.
Yep.
Chief Executive.
Sorry, in response to Councillor Knowles, I think Councillor Knowles is very correct in asking, as a scrutiny committee, how can you be reassured in the future that things are on the right trajectory, and making sure that things are identified at an early stage and resources and action can be taken to rectify if things are failings or trying to come forward. I do think it would be appropriate that a housing dashboard is developed where that has key performance indicators involved. That should be in numbers and in percentages. You should have a regular report from the Assistant Director of Housing or the Director of Housing once appointed. I've also said on the audit plan that a further audit check needs to be undertaken. Now that will go to the Audit and Governance Committee, but then there is no reason why that can't be appended to a further report coming to this committee. So I would like to see, as we come out of this, that a full housing dashboard is developed that you can clearly monitor and identify any early findings or early failings into the system. So please be assured, Chairman, that that's something I'll be looking to put in place.
Thanks very much indeed. That's what I was after. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chief Executive. That's very helpful indeed. Chris Stratford, did you want to come in?
No, I was going to make exactly the point that Karen has just made. Once we get the new compliance software in that I've referred to, hopefully in the new year, what will come out of that is a single point of, if you like, reference for all of our compliance stuff. We should at that point be able to provide the dashboard that's been referred to by the Chief Executive. That ought to form part of the regular reports that you get to this committee and others.
Thank you very much, Steve. That's the point that my Vice Chairman, Councillor Sarah Trotter, was making before the meeting about how we explore where we're going. So did you want to come in there, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's really refreshing to hear. Yes, that was one of my questions. There seems to be email spreadsheets being talked about. I'm really feel more confident that everything's going to be drawn together and highlighted by one system. And like Karen, the Chief Executive, just said, it'd be really good to get a presentation as to when you get that software, how it works. Yeah, really pleased. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Trotter. Do we have any further questions?
Can I just come?
Councillor, yep, sorry. Who's that?
It's Robert Reid.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Councillor Reid, go ahead.
To add, to endorse where Councillor Knowles is coming from, behind the dashboard, that's why I've mentioned the improvement plan, because it shows the tracker of actually what has been the fault, what we're doing, and where the resolve will get to. So what that should do is it should give other councillors the ability to actually monitor the progress of actually what's happening. And I think that's the foundation, if I'm right, that Phil Knowles was actually asking to attain. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Trotter, any further questions from members of the committee?
Yes, just a final question from the committee member, Councillor Watton, please. Linda.
Councillor Linda Wotton.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, can you just confirm with me that this is from page 21 up to 33, please?
I have on my my report here page 21 to page 60.
Oh, right. So therefore, I've got a few points and some questions to bring up, if I may, then, Chairman. First of all, I think this report is honest, open and transparent. I think it's also totally embarrassing. It's been a catalogue of errors, of incompetence and bad management in the past. But we don't really want to dwell on the past. We need to go forward. Several of the items I wanted to bring up have already been touched on. I'd like to know that we have now got the right management in place, or we're addressing that fact. And it's just unbelievable, really. Do we have a stock database officer now? And are we definitely going to get the IT in place so we can join all the dots and we all know where we're going with this?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wotton. I'm going to go to the Chief Executive, Karen Bradford, to respond, and Councillor Robert Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just outline the recruitment timeline that we're working with at the moment. Members agreed a new corporate restructure on the 1st of October at the full council meeting. We are currently out to advert for the recruitment of a director of housing and property. We are looking for an employment committee date of week commencing the 14th of December to hopefully make an appointment. Dependent on their notice period, if it's 2 or 3 months, we should have somebody permanently in place by April of next year. However, I must stress, Chairman, I'm extremely pleased with the appointment that we made with Chris Stratford. He's very experienced. He's being an absolute rock to move this authority forward, working with the Cabinet Member for Housing. Now, I can reassure you on the recruitment. I'm pleased with the team that we have in place now, but I think Chris will be able to answer a little bit more in detail about the IT database or the IT software system to make sure that we've got the right data coming forward and it's collated in the right way.
Good. Does that answer your question, Councillor Wootton?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, that gives me confidence. I do have some other questions on the paper, and I think that it'd probably be Councillor Reid that would probably answer this for me. Is it all right if I continue, Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. On page 28 at 5.67, and this is to do with forward planning for housing. It says best use of existing land and property that can be converted to housing as quickly as possible. And 5.7, Cabinet approved the progression of feasibility work on 10 council-owned sites in January 2018 with the potential to deliver around 105 new homes in the district. And then the whole section here, the point I'm getting to is that housing was allocated for Grantham and now it's being allocated to Stamford and Bourne, is my understanding. And also there's some section 106 monies here, it states, that could possibly be lost. If Councillor Reid could explain that for me, I'd be most pleased. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Reid?
Okay, fine. Yes, I can answer those. I'll try and work in a chronological way. But just before doing that, to just rewind one stage to Councillor Wootton's questions and concerns as to the delivery of looking after housing compliance issues. We have, as it's been said, we have myself as a cabinet member, Callum as the leader, obviously, Chris Stratford and myself, that we meet weekly to update the compliance issues. I do the agendas for those and they're monitored from week to week. The team then that we have in Chris Stratford, we have an excellent technical lead in Paul Crow that we have mentioned, and then underneath him we have 4 particular integral parts. We have 2 that are young, qualified in the field and very responsive officers that have been with us for a while. I don't particularly want to go through names. Our housing manager is well compliant and on the case, and of course we have a support and tenant liaison lady. So that is the structure that's actually working on a weekly basis, and it will be from that team that you will see in the future our compliance come right. We obviously have our housing structure, but I think it's important never to actually say that too much. With respect to housing in particular, there has been a question put to me and answered at FEDCO this week that has been on the number of houses delivered and the number of houses that are to be delivered. There is a similar question into Companies Committee, and again I shall be reiterating that there. The allocation of housing, quite honestly, I'm sure, Councillor Wootton, you join me in really evaluating the need to provide, wherever possible in our district, extra homes, particularly 1 and 2 bedroom units. Yes, we have a programme, an active programme for Grantham. I'm on the second programme now, because the first one wasn't going to deliver very quickly. Both you and I both know with the Blessed Hugh Moore site that was not going to deliver people to live in very quickly. We're now moving on another one at Swinegate, and to see if we can roll out that one. and it's obviously in Grantham. We do have one or two smaller schemes that, because I'm on the planning committee as well, I know they've been in the pipeline for quite a while now, and I'm keen because they are at contractual stage to get them rolled out. 106 monies, yes, exactly, really keen. When we get these through planning, you're absolutely right. There is a timeline in which this money should be employed for the benefits that have come from planning development. And we all know, or most of us know, that if it's not within the timeline, then that money would actually go back to the developer. We very recently we have an excellent officer that actually monitors the 106 monies and commiserate to the areas that they're to, and we did have a review of this. However, what we are going to do, it actually came up today with the planning for the workshops that Kratos are going to do through planning, but we are going to introduce quarterly 106 agreement reports, so we can actually, as members, we can track what is actually happening to those and the movements. There has been an inquiry in Bourne as to 106 monies because we want to make it commiserate to some recreation grounds. So similarly, I know across the district these monies are particular. It's not the tranches that go, albeit they're exceedingly important, to medical, to educational or whatever. That, I mean, those are reasonably strategy where they go, but it's the other elements of it that I think you're referring to, and we need to be able to track and monitor and get some peace of mind and some comfort that from these 106 monies we are actually delivering. Sorry, Chair, I got on a bit of a soapbox with 106s, but I think you can understand where I was coming from. Have I answered your questions?
That's an excellent answer. Thank you, Councillor Reid. But Chairman, I do have another question, if I may. If
you could make it quick, because I do intend to close this item very shortly. Thank you.
I will be quick. Thank you, Chairman. On page 31, 8.3, and I'm sure this is a question for Chris, and if I may just go on from this, it says emphasis will be on heating and ventilation for our off-grid stock. If Chris could in a moment explain to me what that means.
Yep.
And also I want to point out here, Chris, back in famous 2016 again, in Ancaster, in our bungalow, predominantly housing stock, in Angel Court, we replaced storage heaters with electric heating, and the residents there could not then afford their bills.
I understand, so yeah.
In some cases their bills doubled. So what I'd like from you is, before we go and do replacements of things like this, can we bear in mind, I know a lot of it's about our carbon footprint, but can we also bear in mind fuel poverty? Because I know for a fact one resident, who was a younger resident, had to be moved out of her premises because she was virtually having a nervous breakdown because she could not afford to put the heating on, and we had to move her to a smaller property. And I'd like to think that we wouldn't like to put people in that situation again. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, very quickly, off-grid properties are those properties that are not easily accessible from a gas supply perspective. So there are a number of those. In fact, there's quite a lot of properties that if we wanted to put gas central heating in as the energy source and heating source, that would prove quite difficult given the distance they are from the connection point. So that's what's meant by off-grid. In relation to the heating you just mentioned, yes, there is a particular type of heating solution that we adopted in terms of replacing older types of heating. Those heaters proved to be extremely expensive to run. and Angel Court wasn't the only property affected by that type of heating. We've stopped using that. Paul and I issued an instruction a short while ago to stop all installations of that particular type of heater because of the cost to the residents. And we're currently evaluating what we're going to replace that with as soon as possible. But I guess where we've got situations where properties are off grid, that's likely to be a combination of probably solar panels, storage and electric heating, but combined with some good insulation works as well, where those things are proved necessary. But we've got very much the fuel costs at the front of our minds.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. The last committee member to speak is...
Chair, can I just one moment on the heating? 1 second.
If it's quick, yes, thank you.
Quick. Okay, fine. Right, so further assurance to Councillor Wootton is yesterday we spent most of the day literally on the complete housing repair budgets. The relevance, Chairman, is we have 600 properties that have still got rely on solid fuel for their heating, which again is expensive. And I've also got, I refer to it as electric, i.e. electric, which you've referred to, and new electric heating that we will need to do a replacement to. Chris Stratford has referred to the fact that that particular practice has been stopped, but we not only have to have stopped it, we now have to replace it with something that is affordable as well. So both of those mechanisms are within the budgets for next year. So I will be proactive on heating. Heating poverty is very close to my heart, because what you spend on heating sometimes people can't eat food with. So I know exactly what you mean.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Robert and Chris. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor, and thank you very much, Councillor Reid, for that update. Very reassuring. Councillor Philip Knowles, you wish to come back?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman. My last comment was obviously about the report, but now I've got one other question, and I can refer to page 28 and the table 6.1. 2/3 of the way down, near the bottom, it includes Beaufort Drive, Bourne, and it says planning not submitted. Well, clearly planning has been submitted and it has been refused. So can I request that that has been taken off the current housing development programme and replaced with Manning Road, where the inspectorate has recommended a housing job in Bourne to be done. So the Beaufort Road can be taken off that and replaced with Manning Road, where there is likely to be a housing development in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good point, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Reid?
Thank you. If I had had more time in presentation, I would have actually pointed to that as needing a correction at the outset of the meeting. So I'm not surprised that Councillor Knowles has said about it, and he's absolutely poignantly correct. And it's not so much as deletion of the line or the allocation at Bourne, but namely the site. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Right, I'm now going to open up to non-members. I see we've got Councillor Mark Whittington, Councillor Phil Dilts and Councillor Ashley Baxter. I intend to close this particular item soon, so I'm going to open now to Councillor Mark Whittington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and ask a question here today. I felt when I read the report that I really had to say something, because I've been initially a county councillor since 2015 and district councillor for the last 18 months. And 5.5 years I've been a councillor at both county and district. I think this is the most disturbing and concerning report I think I've ever read. It seems to highlight there's been a systemic failure of process, policy and governance over a very long period of time. As a sort of, we are the biggest social landlord in the district, obviously, and I firmly believe a very, very strong duty of care to our tenants, because more than just a duty of care, there's a sort of levels of fundamental human decency about this, to actually, make sure that we don't have people living in our properties where there's been no sort of fire checks or gas checks or fire evacuation. You can just go on and list it out. You know, we do need. You know, I was brought up for a large part of my childhood and adulthood in a council house in Grantham. My mother's been was a council tenant for nearly 50 years. So I feel very, very strongly about the rights of council tenants. Within my ward on SK, I've got a small number of South Kesteven tenants, but in the seat I represent at the county level, that includes the entirety of the Earlsfield estate, on which obviously there are probably I would hazard to guess a very, very large proportion of SK's entire tenants, and I really do feel that, you know, as a council we do need to offer them something that's a lot better than has happened in the past. I won't go on too much more on that. It's very hard because I think, like Councillor Reid, and who's expressed his concerns about this, and other councillors as well, it's very difficult to stay calm when you read this, because it is so concerning. My question is really, it's not so much about going forward, because I think questions around the action plans going forward and what's going to happen, scrutiny, have been addressed. But my concern goes back to sort of culture. I mean, I've worked in a lot of large organisations, both public sector and private sector, and it seems to me, reading these reports, that historically within the housing department there's been a poor, I've used the phrase poor culture. Now, it's great that we've got a new portfolio holder in Robert, a new leader of the council in Kelham, a new chief exec in Karen, and a new head of housing, Chris. And certainly from what the four of them have said today, I think they share the concerns of a lot of us, and a real strong commitment to improve things. And I'm convinced, I'm pretty convinced that they can take us out of the current problems. But my question is, first question is a sort of reassurance around, and I think it's been partly alluded to. We can sort out the present problems highlighted in the present report, but going forward, what are we going to try to do to make sure that we change the culture within the department so this kind of thing can't happen in the future? You know, we don't want to be here in 5 or 10 years' time, if we're still on the council, having a similar sort of report coming our way, because we need to learn lessons from this, and I think it's really important that we do learn lessons. So my first question would be around sort of reassurance about the culture of the housing department going forward, and related to that is, potentially, once we've got these issues out of the way, would any mileage be gained in seeing if we could get a review into our housing department, so we get to make another view from another council to come in and have a look. In terms of some of the other things mentioned in the report, I'm pretty sure that if we'd been a private landlord with some of these failures, we could have very well have ended up before the courts. And I'm just wondering if our legal department have actually done some investigation into have we in effect exposed ourselves potentially to sort of legal proceedings. I'm thinking here not only civil proceedings but potentially also criminal proceedings as well, because, you know, it seems that we have been in breach of a number of regulations, and so just some reassurance that aspect has been looked at and considered as well. Really pleased actually that there now seems to be a risk log in there and proper analysis of risk, because that will help to highlight any sort of failures in terms of internal controls going forward. Obviously this report is going to governance and audit next week, and I'm a governance and audit, so we'll have another look at it then. But I think really important going forward for Mr. Chairman, for both this committee and also for governance and audit, is that there is proper scrutiny of this by members, because, you know, the report in large part refers to the council, but the council are the members, the elected members, and I think it's down to every single elected member of this council to actually, because as we've been mentioned before, but we all have social housing SK tenants in our patches, but then we must also take, as a group of councillors, a collective approach to this to make sure that there is effective scrutiny, both of this issue, but also going forward to make sure that this doesn't happen again in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You're right, Councillor Whitton. Scrutiny is key. A point raised by Councillor Philip Knowles earlier on. I'm going to go now to the Chief Executive, Karen Bradford, to respond. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Whittington, for that question. And I do think it's an exceedingly good question about we do not want to have levels of failure in the future. I'm sure there is going to be mistakes, but on a risk assessment, we need to make sure that those mistakes, if they do happen, we learn from those mistakes. I think as members are aware, I have experience of being a director of housing with other services at a neighbouring authority for over a period of 10 years. So I do bring quite an extensive experience of housing services. We will be looking to appoint, as we have covered, a new director of housing and property. We do need to do some team building. We need to do some training to make sure that our skills and competencies of the team are as high standards that we can expect. And we'll be doing some work with the housing team around that cultural change. We need to make structural changes. We need to make sure that the right skill sets are in the right place. As for external challenge, the authority has not had a peer review for many, many years, and we do need to programme in an external peer review. That's normally done through the Local Government Association. However, in reference to housing, it's a social housing regulator who will be challenging as our, if you like, our reviewer for, I would say, a substantial period of time. It could be up to 2 years. As if we are found to be non-compliant, we will be in intervention. If we are in intervention, we are held accountable to them, and that I'm sure will be a requirement for myself and probably the leader of the council and the cabinet member to meet regularly with the social housing regulator. As Chris referred to earlier, Chris and I were scrutinised by them for over an hour and a half this week, and I do believe that will continue, I would say, for a period of approximately 2 years. In reference to making sure that things don't slip through the net and we're fully covered, we need to, once we've got all the information and a new housing stock survey completed of all 6,000 properties, that can then inform a new housing business plan. There will be service plans put in place. We talked about dashboards, and each individual member of staff will be having a formal appraisal every year where personal targets will be put into that appraisal, and they will be judged on their performance against those actions. So I do think there is a large process of change for the whole team, but I do think that we've got the framework to drive those improvements forward. I think Shaheen is with us on the call, and she may want to comment on the part of the question from Councillor Whittington about the legal exposure that we may find ourselves in.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Shaheen, are you there?
If I may, Chairman, she's showing on the list of participants, but when I hover over the name, it says not in the call. I'll see if I can get hold of her.
Okay, thank you. I've got 2 more requests to speak, and the next one is from Councillor Phil Dilks. Councillor Dilks.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Councillor Robert Reid, he just wanted to comment. I don't know if he still wants to.
Councillor Reid, do you wish to?
Yes, I'll try to be quick again. I'm picking up on the responses to Councillor Mark Whittington. Whittington. Firstly, the same frustrations of actually knowing the criteria of the knowledge of our housing is going to come at audit as well, because they have been asking questions in the past and they haven't been quantified very well at all. If they had been, we wouldn't be where we are. But I've been drilling down on this, and now that it is as the findings are, I am sure that I've got perfectly what I needed to get, and that is a position statement. We have a profile, and I can work and answer to members to that effect. As referring to the private landlords scenario, yeah, I've been a hotelier most of my life, and fire regulations and safety of my residents, they would have to be very compliant. One of my most urgent and expedient actions at the moment is in our sheltered houses, in our sheltered housing schemes. The Karen, Chief Exec, has mentioned as to the regulatory and any penalty legal challenges. Of course, by being proactive with the regulator and trying to, in some ways, even preempt what they're going to be asking for, we're actually working expediently in the hope that our substantiation and that our proactive actions will actually eliminate any fines. And something that members, and particular members of the public, I've been very keen to evaluate, and Shaheen evaluated this for me, is the word insurance. I have checked two things. One is that the landlord insurance, the landlord insurers are aware of the situation, and I've also checked the implications for the tenants, that there is no exposure as far as their contents and their private insurances, and I hope that information is helpful. Thank you for letting me speak again.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Whittington, Shaheen's in another meeting, so I'll ensure that she gets a reply to you regarding your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Councillor Phil Dilks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been an elected councillor on different authorities for over 20 years, but I've never experienced not just one, but two hugely damaging and frankly absolutely scandalous reports on the same council agenda that together blow a massive hole in the claims of competence, as others have said, by this council. It begs the question, what else aren't we doing properly? And it certainly, as I think Mark previously said, it shows a failure of effective scrutiny in this council, and I think we need to be addressing that seriously as councillors. Dealing with the housing compliance report, or should I say the non-compliance report, yes, we've been forced to own up to the fact that we failed to put the most basic legal protections in place for our 6,000 council tenants. Lack of electric wiring tests, no fire tests, never mind Legionella and asbestos failings. Today we learn that the action plan is going to take 2 or 3 years to reach legal compliance. I don't find that acceptable. In the current year, we expect to make £5 million surplus or profit on our housing stock. So don't tell us the resources are not there. Linda's experience, Councillor Linda Wotton's experiences in one area, we all know, we've all got our own experiences as ward councillors, and we know that we haven't got a good record in on housing, looking after our tenants. I never realised it was so bad that we weren't even doing the basic checks. I'd like to ask how long it's been going on that we've not done those basic checks. I agree, culture and attitude to council housing needs addressing, and I hope it will be. Yes, I want to see new council homes, we all do, but that's not the response today to our existing tenants. That's what they need, not what they need to hear. Look, we had the Grenville tragedy, which saw 77 deaths, mostly council tenants. That should have been a massive wake-up call to all of us and every local authority housing provider in the country. But 3 years on, we learn that we in South Kesteven are failing to meet every day the basic legal obligations.
Councillor Dilks, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you get to your question, please? Thank you.
Yes. The Conservatives never stop telling us that those we seek to serve, how efficient and caring they are in running this council. And these reports show the truth is very different. I did have to make a statement, I've got to say, and not as a question, but I'm happy to ask a question. These claims have a very hollow ring to them. Even in the face of this shocking report that we're looking at now on this item and the one later on, and in response to the Riverside scandal, claims, we've heard the council say that our immediate priority is and always will be the safety and well-being of our tenants. How can we say that when we've let our tenants down so badly by failing the most basic of legal obligations to protect them?
Is that
If
a question, Cal?
meet their legal obligations, can you confirm that we'd prosecute them? And as has already been asked, but I would like to answer the question: are we at risk of prosecution? What's the cost of putting this right? I'll move on if I may, but I have to say others have spoken a lot longer than I'm speaking, non-committee members as well, particularly Mark, and I welcome what Mark said. Sadly, these reports may be the tip of an iceberg. We've had the inadequate, lackadaisical response to the Worcester and Bosch fiasco of hundreds of our tenants left with no heating over Christmas. Yes, we know Riverside we're coming to, and we've all seen the poor state of properties handed over to new tenants. I'm very disappointed in the unclear letter that went to tenants that didn't actually reveal the depth of our non-compliance and failings. I welcome the changes that we've heard about so far. I have to say I've heard it all before. What's needed is not a tinkering at the edges, or even a bit more than that. What's needed is root and branch reform, and I don't think it's good enough to expect the cabinet member to pick up the pieces, although I welcome what the actions that he's taken so far. My experience tells me that more elected members across the political divide need to be much more involved in how we do things and provide the service, the housing service. I'm not just talking about the cabinet member. These two unprecedented damning reports need unprecedented and urgent action. I'd ask, why has an emergency meeting of the full council not yet been called to respond to this crisis and to agree a way forward, rather than consideration by this committee of just 7 members of a council of 56 members? And I appreciate it's going to governance and audit next week, but that's a similar number. I think there needs to be a new, open, transparent and publicly accountable committee, a new committee of this council's elected members working with tenants' representatives to monitor the progress towards compliance. We're told it's going to take 2 or 3 years. It's a big job. And I don't mean a closed workshop. I know Councillor Reid's comments that he's made 2 presentations in the past week. I just wonder, who were those two, Robert? I didn't quite get what you were saying there. I'll reserve the rest of my comments for item 11, which is Riverside. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Dilks. Who would like to respond to Councillor Dilks?
Please, Chairman, when you're ready.
Councillor Reid, go ahead.
Okay, fine. There was an awful lot of criteria in what Councillor Dilks has actually said, so I'm going to try and reply to the poignant parts that I could respond to whilst listening. The 2 presentations, firstly, the first one was on Monday night to the Conservative group, and the second one on Tuesday night was to all members. They were not of the same style. One was more intricate to do with housing compliance. The second one on Tuesday, I wanted to use the opportunity, as I did, and I'm sure you were present, to actually not only focus on housing compliance, but also on the complete vision of housing, and I did it in many parts. With regards to the fact that we have a positive balance in housing, that is correct, Councillor Dilks, there is also monies carried forward from previous years. And you and I will agree with every other councillor that if this money had been spent with us being compliant or our housing stock at the right standard, these balances wouldn't be there. So let's be absolutely blunt and to the point about it. And I don't find this at all political. I can assure you that I shall be making the relevant expenditure not in a panic way, but in a chronological way. And we will be producing next year, firstly, a 1-year budget, whilst I am also working on the time on a 3-year budget. And those budgets will be realistic. They will be commiserate to exactly where we are, how we put our stock right, and how we move forward. But more importantly, it matters to me. I know it matters to you. I have the strength. My leader supports me in it, and all other members who want to show me, support me, help me. I am absolutely bound to duty that during my tenure that I am going to deliver more homes at the same time. I am not going to use the stock condition or indeed the rollout of programme for improvement. So we've got compliance, we've got repairs, and above all we've got refurbishment programmes. And they don't want to be just commiserate to the fact that a house needs a new roof every 50, 60 years. They need to be commiserate to a priority order of what we actually need to do amongst our council stock. And I'm listening to people in Stamford. I love going to the riverside and talking to people, and I can assure you that's where I am. And I'd like to give you one further assurance. I live in Bourne. I've no intention exactly of moving from Lincolnshire very far. I hope that I will be respected in 4 years' time, or even before that what I have done has been to earnestly help and support the current situation, sort it out, and actually deliver new homes. We have a housing register that is growing with criteria, and I need to demonstrate at Cabinet a balance between repairs, regulation compliance, new homes, and a balanced budget. But of course, we all know in housekeeping, however big, however small, it's got to be within affordability. And we're going to work with Homes England to see what other finances down the line we can actually secure. But a pound is not a pound coin until it's actually in our receipt. And I ain't spending any promises on grants or whatever till I've actually got them. So I hope I'm coming across to being solid in the way forward, and I look forward to everybody's support, and I will see both scrutiny as a helpful critical friend, and I will see audit as a way of reporting what we should be reporting. And I would agree with you. I would agree with all councillors that we haven't known enough about this. I've been on the case, and that being on the case has actually provoked, I think, the leader to actually saying, right, Robert, you can do housing, so now I've got it. So hey ho, here we go.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to take one more speaker now, and that's Councillor Ashton Baxter, and I'm going to close the debate. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. And an awful lot to say. I've got three main questions, but I would say first of all that Councillor Reid just said that it's not a political issue, and yet he said that he had to report to the Conservative group before to anybody else. If it's not political, why did it have to go to Conservative group? That's not my question. None of this comes as should come as any surprise to us. If you look at the record of the Governance and Audit Committee of March 2019, it says, and I quote, that with regard to fire safety report and result of testing, 5 medium and 2 low priority management actions were identified, including lack of fire checks, lack of fire safety drills, lack of inspections. This is not new. This has been on the list of things to do for the for your committee for years. In terms of the voids policy, which is mentioned, I can't remember exactly where in the report it's mentioned, but I asked about the voids policy. In fact, you asked about the voids policy, Chair. Last year, in November 2019, you had a whole presentation about voids presentation and turnaround. It was mentioned the software system, Northgate. Somebody was going to explain to you what the Northgate software system was. Last year, we spent over £100,000 with Northgate software provider. One of the reasons that was given around by one of the officers earlier on was that the software was not fit for purpose. Why are we spending £100,000 on Northgate if it's not doing the job that we're asking it to do? But back to the voids, you had a presentation last November. I asked questions at Governance and Audit in June this year, and I was promised at that time that a voids policy would be implemented. Having been through the Rural and Communities Committee, it would be implemented by November. It's not even on your agenda. It's not even on your work plan. What has happened to the voids policy? We don't currently have a void policy, and people are noticing. I've got people phoning me who who are looking at houses which are void, saying, "Why can't I move into that house? I'm a council resident. I'm outgrown the house I'm in, but I can see that that property has been empty for 6 months." It's all very well. I say to my children, sorry means I won't do it again. If you say sorry, it means you're going to do something about it. But with the Riverside and with some of this agenda, we've said sorry over and over and over again, and it's meaningless if you're not going to take any action, which we haven't. So my 3 questions are, what's happened to the voids policy? When will it be sorted out? Why isn't it on your work plan? What's going on with the software? Why are we spending so much with Northgate software when it clearly isn't doing everything we want it to do? And thirdly, can we really take your apologies seriously?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Baxter, for your questions. I can assure you that the voids policy will be on our agenda at a later stage, but we've had the national pandemic to deal with in between. I'm going to go to Councillor Robert Reid to answer further your questions.
Sorry, Chairman, have you got me?
I have, yes. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, I'd like to ask Chris Stratford to actually explain briefly on the Northgate system, and indeed the upgrade on our Northgate system that is budgeted and currently being evaluated. But before doing so, the word voids, in particular major voids, I'm pleased that Councillor Ashley Baxter's brought this up. It's something that I am obviously concerned with. It's something in particular that Chris Stratford has picked up on. What matters to us is the length of time of our major voids and the loss of income, particular from not having these let. But more importantly, if we got the turnaround of these major voids much shorter, we would be looking after people that need roofs over their heads much quicker too. So that is a score on voids. You will see progress. You will see me reporting on an improvement where voids. And Chairman, I would like to state that sorry, I haven't said I'm sorry. In my tenure of time, I don't think I've done anything wrong yet, but I'm intending not to need to say sorry. I know exactly what Councillor Ashley Baxter is referring to. I know other members of the Cabinet have indeed very honourably and honestly and honourably actually apologised in the past. If I need to do, I will do so, but I've got every intention of fighting that as being my last resort. And I'd like to move on to Chris to speak about Northgate well, they're basically my answers I can give at this moment.
Okay, happy to give what I can about your current Northgate system. I don't obviously know the detailed contractual arrangements you're in at the present time between the council and Northgate, and I'm not sure whether Northgate is just a single housing system or whether it interfaces or deals with other systems as well. And that £100,000 that you refer to may not necessarily just refer to the cost for housing, but I'll stand corrected because, as I say, I don't know your contractual arrangements. Just in terms of the existing system, however, your existing system is an old system. It's very old. It's very basic. Some of the software arrangements that need to be in place to support effective letting of properties, for example, or the management of your estates are very limited indeed in terms of the current modules you have. I suspect, as it was with my last local authority I worked at, who had exactly the same system, and many of the problems that we're dealing with now in terms of limitations around that system, I suspect that some of the modules may not be fully operational, and therefore the costs as you go through year on year in terms of getting support from Northgate are increasing as a result of the time that's required to maintain a creaking and an old infrastructure system around what it does and how it does it. The new system is entirely different from your existing infrastructure. It's cloud-based as opposed to server-based. It's much more efficient and effective. The parameter setting can be done internally rather than seeking work from Northgate to change parameters under the old system. So the requirements around having to incur fairly large ongoing costs for running the system are significantly reduced and made much more efficient and effective. So whilst the initial cost of actually getting that new cloud-based system and all of the infrastructure around it and the training and everything else that goes with it may seem large, in terms of what you're having to do now and what you get out of it and what you're having to pay for now, many of those will diminish as a revenue cost to you as you go forward. But as I say, if you need any more specific information about how you arrive at that £100,000 cost base that you refer to, I'm happy to go away and look at that in some detail and give you the specifics about how that is made up.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris. Members of the committee, we've had a really good debate on this particular item. I'm going to close the debate now and refer you to page 21 for the 4 recommendations. The recommendations are: 1, to review the compliance audit and action plan to meet the recommendations indicated within the audit plan and agree to receive quarterly updates on the progress being made within the work programme. 2, to note and provide comments on the revised 3-year rolling HRA new build housing investment programme and support the principles that the housing service should focus on compliance priorities, utilising where necessary funds released through rationalising the HRA new build housing investment programme proposals. 3, that officers provide necessary updates to members regarding key performance and delivery of programmes to ensure capital investment and compliance objectives are achieved. And the final one, to note that the Council has reported itself to the regulator and jointly working with the regulator towards compliance as a matter of priority. Do I have a proposer?
I'll propose that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Proposed by Councillor Mike Exton. Seconder?
Sarah Trotter.
Thank you, Councillor Trotter. We will now go to the vote. It's either for, against or abstain. Zena, could I ask you to carry out the vote, please?
Certainly. Councillor Ray Wotton?
For.
Councillor Sarah Trotter?
For.
Councillor Mike Exton?
For.
Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cabery-Brown?
For.
Councillor Philip Knowles? Councillor Philip Knowles? I'll come round to him again at the end.
Thank you.
Councillor Amanda Wheeler?
I don't know if it's possible to add in an extra recommendation. It's just that I really liked what Councillor Dilks came up with about having a working group taking on board different areas of the community that would work together. And I don't know if there's an option to add in. I can't remember the exact words he used, but I was struck by what a sensible suggestion it was. Is it possible to add something like that in?
Councillor Reader, we're just voting on the recommendations that I've given you. So either for, against, or abstain.
So it's not possible to add anything else in?
No, for, against, or abstain.
I'll vote for then.
Thank you very much indeed. Zena?
Councillor Linda Wootton?
For.
And Councillor Philip Knowles? Councillor Philip Knowles? I've not got an answer from him, but everyone else is for.
Thank you very much indeed. That's carried. Members of the committee, we've now been sitting for 2 hours. Do you wish a 10-minute comfort break, or are you happy to carry on for the next 2 items?
Well, plod on, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? If not, then we'll move on to item 9, key performance. There are 2 recommendations with this. I understand the speaker is Ken Lyon. Ken.
Yes, I think the leader might be doing a brief introduction. Is that right, leader?
Thank you, Ken. Yes, if I may, Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. So, as you all know, the corporate plan was approved by full council on the 1st of October, which sets out our vision for South Kesteven District Council to be the best district in which to live, to work and to visit. And of course, there's our 5 priorities. The corporate plan is the cornerstone of the council and will enable us to manage performance effectively with a golden thread from the vision to individuals' performance appraisals and activities. The corporate plan sets out 54 actions under these priorities, and the aim of the session today, along with the various other overview and scrutiny sessions in the coming months, is to agree effectively what success will look like in terms of targets, how we will measure success, key performance indicators, how we will know if we are on track to succeed, such as milestones. Appendix B of the report sets out a draft set of measures and targets that the Cabinet members, alongside relevant officers, have proposed to the committee. The intention is that these measures are both ambitious but also deliverable, and once achieved will contribute us to achieving our vision for the District Council. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Ken Lyon to talk through the rest of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Ken, over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Callum. So yeah, as Callum says, the point of the session today is to agree the performance indicators and targets that fall within the scope of this scrutiny committee. And the reason we brought it into the scrutiny committee is we're really keen to get the committee's input on the targets and the performance indicators rather than just imposing them, so that we can have kind of collective understanding and ownership of them and really have some good discussion around it. Following the committee, should there be any changes to the proposals, my plan would be to send round a revised draft, and then we can start reporting and monitoring against them at the future overview and scrutiny committee. And as I say, just to also highlight something that's mentioned in the report, is that there's an annual review process as part of the corporate plan. So after the end of each financial year, there'll be an opportunity to review the overall performance of the council, but also test whether or not the targets and the performance indicators are actually the right targets, because I think we have to recognise that we operate in a changing environment. So there will be ongoing discussion around that. From a personal perspective, this is the first scrutiny committee to consider the KPIs, so we will be going to all of them over the coming months for the relevant ones. So following the meeting, if people have got kind of feedback on how to manage that or how to present them, be very keen to take that on board as well. So that's kind of a bit of an overview. In terms of the targets in the report, I'm not proposing to go through them line by line, but I suppose I want to highlight 3 things. So the first is there's probably three different types of targets. So the first is around quantifiable key performance indicator, which is something like number of homes built, something that's very easily numeric. The second is a project with some milestones. So an example of that would be the progress against the Grantham Southern Extension. And the third is one where we've still got a strategy that needs to be approved, and once that strategy has been approved by Cabinet or the relevant committee, then the milestones will get incorporated into the corporate plan at that point. So there's a number across the corporate plan that fall into that category. So the way I propose to take it is that we'll start off on the housing one. So the kind of three overarching priorities within the housing priorities around supporting housing growth, ensuring that growth is of the quality that it needs to be, and gives and the existing residents benefit from it. And third, as we've mentioned earlier, supporting and providing the right services to our tenants. So I've across. So if we start on housing with any questions, and then perhaps move on to communities after that. Just to note that there's various officers on this call that have provided information for this. So and the cabinet members. So others may answer some of the questions as they come up.
Thank you very much indeed, Ken. Councillor Trotter, are there any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Trotter?
No, Mr. Chairman, there is no committee member questions. However, Councillor Baxter has indicated he wished to speak.
Are there any other non-members who wish to ask a question as well? No, well, I'm going to call on Councillor Baxter to ask his question, and then I'm going to close this particular item. Councillor Baxter. Councillor Baxter.
Oh, thank you. I had a brief interruption. I just wanted to clarify. I think Mr. Lyons is slightly mistaken in that the environmental performance indicators, or the key performance indicators, that have been considered already by the Environment Committee, and we've established some useful barometers. I think it's a long time overdue that the council was regularly via scrutiny groups looking at its own performance, and it's definitely to be welcomed. And I hope that you'll be looking at the detail and not just at the performance, but also the reasons for the performance. That might help us escape the debacle that we've just been talking about, where issues are left to stew for years on end because nobody's taking any notice of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Ken, do you want to respond to that?
Just say thank you to Councillor Baxter for clarification. I think there's still a further session intended for the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee, because I believe that there's some additional things in the corporate plan that there aren't fully agreed PIs for, but noted the good practice in that committee, and I think that's really good comments. So thank you.
Thank you. Ken, you wish to speak on communities?
Yes. So with the communities items, so those focus very much on enabling and supporting the voluntary and community sector, the improving and protecting the well-being and health of our residents across the districts, and also on promoting equality. So those kind of cover the themes of the stuff within the communities section. And again, I know the councillor isn't here, but I think very welcoming of the scrutiny and the ongoing performance monitoring that the scrutiny committee will be providing.
Thank you, Ken. Is that all the updates you wish to speak on?
Yeah. So, and yes, unless there's any questions from anyone else on the communities item.
Thank you very much indeed. Open to members of the committee. Any questions? Any questions, Councillor Trotter?
Councillor Linda Wotton wishes to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Linda Wotton.
Thank you, Chairman. It's on page 31, number 8, and it's Embrace the National Mental Health Challenge. What I'm querying is, it says under Director, it says Deputy Chief Executive. Do we have a Deputy Chief Executive, please? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that. We will have a Deputy Chief Executive. We have now gone out to advert for the posts following the restructure. The Employment Committee will be interviewing, I believe, at the middle of December, and then obviously if a person is offered that position, then hopefully they'll fulfil that job either in the new part of next year.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Any further questions, Councillor Trotter, from members of the committee?
No, I can't see any in the chat box.
I'll open up to non-members. Any questions from non-members of the committee? Is that none, Councillor Trotter?
None. No, we can move on.
Thank you very much indeed, Ken. We're going to go to the recommendations on the front, which are two. One, to approve the proposed key performance indicators and targets associated with the actions in the South Kesteven Corporate Plan 2020 to 2023. Two, note that key performance indicators and success criteria to each action will be reviewed and, if necessary, revised as part of the annual review process. I'm happy to propose that. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Trotter. I'm going to go to the vote though. So the vote is for, against or abstain. Zena, over to you.
Councillor Ray Wootton.
For.
Councillor Sarah Trotter.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cabery-Brown.
For.
Councillor Philip Knowles. Councillor Philip Knowles. Councillor Amanda Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Linda Wootton.
For.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. That is carried. I'm going to now move on to the next item, the last item, the Riverside Flats, and have to inform you that there is a exempt paper, but if we refer to that exempt paper, we will have to go into closed session, which I don't want to, but if we do, I will call it. I welcome Julie Pitkin, the independent HR consultant, but before we get to there, I'm going to read a statement as ward member. I was horrified to read in the local Grantham Journal headline, "Lied to and let down," as my colleague Councillor Smith and I had both responded immediately to every call we had regarding the lack of heating or water in the Riverside complex. The whole sorry saga has been a catalogue of errors, and like the residents, we too have been let down, as we escalated the complaints to the Housing Department in blind faith that positive steps have been taken. I believe many residents have reported their complaints to customer services and then contacted councillors in desperation and frustration when things didn't improve. Let me make it clear, the residents and the community are my priority, and this must never ever happen again, as it is a total disgrace to leave residents and some elderly and vulnerable people in such distress. Hopefully lessons have been learned. However, I fully understand the distress all this has caused, and I was pleased to hear from a couple of residents last year they were happy with the repairs that had taken place. And to quote one gentleman, he said to me he was as warm as toast, which was good news. We also have a new chief executive who, along with the leader, is totally committed to putting in place the proper management within the housing portfolio, supported by Councillor Robert Reid, the Cabinet Member for Housing. I look forward to having a single point of contact for residents and further updates in meetings. I'm now going to call on Councillor Jackie Smith, fellow ward councillor, to also make a statement. Councillor Jackie Smith. Councillor Smith.
She's got missing.
Bear with me one moment, Chair. I'll just unmute her. Jackie Smith, if you can hear me, please don't unmute yourself, because we may do so at the same time. I've unmuted Councillor Jackie Smith now, so she should be able to speak.
Councillor Smith, can you hear me? Councillor Smith, can you hear me? I'm going to come back to Councillor Smith. I'm going to go to Councillor Kellen Cook, Leader of the Council.
Sorry, there we are. Thank you, Chairman. And also, obviously, I can remember when this first did reach the council meeting, and I did apologise to residents at the time for the conditions that they were left in. And I know that both myself and Robert have been down personally to Riverside, and I know you've also advocated that, and we are extremely sorry to the residents of Riverside for what they have had to go through. I know that Councillor Robert Reid is continuing to visit there on a very, very frequent basis in order to support the residents moving forwards. Obviously, we did commission this report, and obviously it has told us exactly where the failings are. And I think it's another example of where we've had failure in the system. So to the residents, obviously on behalf of the District Council, I would like to apologise unreservedly for the inconvenience and trauma that you may have experienced. And Chairman, if we can move to Councillor Robert Reid, I know he'd also like to make a statement as well.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Reid.
Sorry, Chairman, have you got me? Yeah, okay, yeah, fine. Thank you very much. Well, in opening this item on the agenda, we will be having a presentation, obviously made by Julie Picton shortly. However, to support both you and indeed Jackie Smith, you hope it never will happen again. What I have done, I was in the council meeting where Mr. Philip Gadd came to us December before last, and a acknowledgement of the concern was taken on by the council with an apology. A similar event happened in January when I know that Councillor Barry Dobson did similarly. When I took over it, this is where I said I didn't want to say that I was sorry. I've sent, along with the leader and indeed with the chief executive, an apology for what has happened in the past. What I have done since February, as the leader has alluded to, is I've been there many times. So in going there many times and understanding a little bit or quite a bit about heating systems, have not been satisfied with what I've been told. I've been in the plant room, I've inspected the valves, I've seen replacements and servicing of them. I've seen the pumps, I've seen the condition of them, I've seen remedial replacements done there. I've seen the radiators, and I've monitored most of the units that have actually systematically been through the radiators taken out, tipped upside down, and seen what residuals has come out of the system, and indeed in the recharging of the system, being very careful that the right strength of inhibitor has been put back in the system, and that the boilers have been looked at, and that in the servicing of those boilers, I now believe that there is a 5-year lifespan left in them, and of course I will be looking into replacements, and also with the carbon footprint in mind. So, and there is also a mechanism of at each individual unit of a heat induction, an HDU, which is now an HIU, which is it's a plate in a box that is an exchange of heat as a primary source of direct hot water. And this, and when these get contaminated, then they don't deliver hot water as they should do, and that's been the latest thing. To that end, I have organised, and we have the budget to do it, to actually have them completely taken out over a 5-week period, and indeed have them replaced with some storage tanks for each individual unit, which will mean the draw of hot water at peak heating times for heat in the home as well will take less strain off the boilers as well. So that's what I've been doing. Whilst this report has actually been coming, we can now use the toolkit of the independent inquiry as towards a checklist as well as compliance. I have a checklist presentation that after Julie has made a presentation, I would like to use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Councillor Reid. Does the Chief Executive wish to make a statement?
I have nothing further to add at this stage other than my sincere apologies, and it's an area that was brought to my attention when I first started here about the difficulties and the problems that we'd have with Riverside. On the back of that, I've been urging and we've been liaising with the Health and Safety Executive to try and understand and receive their report, and it's disappointing that that isn't with us today, Chairman, as I think it would have been sensible to have a comprehensive suite of documents. They have promised at the present time that they'll get that HSE report to us in December, but I'm really pleased with the independent report that's presented today.
Thank you very much indeed. Before I go to Julie Pitkin, I'm going to try again for Councillor Jackie Smith. Councillor Jackie Smith, are you there? No? Right. Welcome to Julie Pitkin, the independent HR consultant. You're very welcome to this council. Sorry you've had to wait so long to get to this item on the agenda, but please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just clarify, would you like me to show my slides now, or is that for the later section?
Now if you can, please. Thank you.
No, sure. Just give me a moment. That's fine. It looks like my sharing controls have been disabled. It was okay to start with.
All I can say is we have copies of your slides on the report, if that helps.
Okay. No, it seems to have it seems to be working now. Just a second.
Thank you.
Can everybody see that okay?
No.
No?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, yes.
You. All I can see is you. I can't see anything at the moment. I've lost my screen.
Chair, sorry, may I just take a moment to confirm with Julie Pitkin, is this the exempt version of the public version of the slides, which doesn't contain the exempt information?
That's why I was asking the question, actually, because I've only got one set of slides, which is in the paperwork today. That's why I was just checking that.
We have a copy of your slides with the report in the open section.
Do you?
Yes, Chair, just to make you aware, I received 2 copies of the slide presentation, an initial copy which was exempt and then an updated version with the exempt information removed so that it could be shared in public session. I just want to make sure this is correct.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yes, this is the updated version.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Public session.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Julie. Go ahead.
Okay, so so my name's Julie Pitkin, and I was appointed on the 20th of January in 2020 to conduct an independent inquiry into events at Riverside over recent months. The scope of my inquiry, as I've just popped up on the screen, was to explore available information relating to the approach taken by SKDC in the past to provide hot water and heating services to the residents of Riverside. Secondly, to explore the commissioning process, which was used to appoint the contractor to carry out the work on site, and whether this followed the agreed SKDC process. Then to explore the management of the project from when work began on site, which was on the 29th of April 2019 until completion. And finally, to explore the impact of the project on Riverside residents. So in approaching this inquiry, I was very keen to explore the impact of the project on Riverside residents first, because that I thought would open up additional lines of inquiry which potentially weren't explicit. So I began by interviewing council employees, It was also arranged, and again, the council had already offered this to residents. They were given the opportunity over a 4-week period to send their views in to me so that I had their perspective as well. I also looked at the relevant council policies which related to all the issues that were within the scope of the inquiry. And I also, as the inquiry progressed, I sought relevant documents to support what individual witness testimony had provided. And obviously what I was looking to do was look at what had happened and did that follow existing council policy, or were there gaps in that following a process. So if I just move on to look at the findings, I've got findings on each of those 4 areas, and then a series of recommendations. So first finding was findings were in respect of the first area, which was to look at that approach in the past that the council had taken to provide hot water and heating services. So one of my findings was that the replacement of parts of the hot water and heating systems in 2012 and 2016, given the age of the connecting pipework, was perhaps short-sighted. I discovered quite a lot of evidence that there were serious issues with hot water and heating, and they had actually begun in 2016, although not necessarily serious at the beginning. They'd certainly become that way over a period of time. There was a lack of a central point to record issues and complaints from residents. There were several different places that they could call in, and there was a lack of management oversight of those issues and complaints coming in. And there, I also found that there was a lack of action by the council to fully investigate and resolve the root cause of the concerns from 2016 up until a decision was made to replace the pipework, and that was in January 2019. On the second area, which was around the commissioning process, which was used to appoint the contractor, and I had to look at the agreed council process to see if what had actually happened followed what should have actually happened. And I did find that the council's contract and procurement procedure rules were correctly followed in appointing the contractor. So that the required steps were taken and there were no concerns in that area. What I did find, though, was that the project officer may not have been suitably qualified in commercial heating to provide accurate information. There was a framework provider. This is like an organisation that links contracts to people who are providing services. And so sorry, what I'm trying to say is that the person who was doing that wasn't sufficiently qualified to provide the correct and accurate information to that provider, which then would allow them to find a suitable contractor to be recommended to the council. There are different, you can be qualified in commercial heating systems and you can be qualified in domestic heating systems. And the individual project officer didn't have that required qualification in the commercial heating systems. I also found that pre-contract actions were not completed by the contractor or the council before work started. So just to expand on that a little bit, the council's contract and procurement procedure rules are very clear about certain things needing to be done before work starts. There is also council policies around things needing to be completed and signed off before the contract actually starts. Whereas what I found was that work had started before some of those necessary things had been completed. So this leads into my next set of findings, which were on the third area. So to explore the management of the project from when work began on site. So that was on the 29th of April until completion. So at the time I was carrying out the inquiry, the work was still going on. So I submitted my report, I think it was around the 17th or 18th of March 2020, and things were still just being finished off at that point. So at the time I wrote the report, the work still hadn't actually been fully completed. So I found that the following actions, which are required by council policies and processes, were not completed or correctly followed by the project officer. So there is a comprehensive document in council policies and processes called the project check sheet, which is exactly what it says. It's a check sheet. That wasn't completed. The FH10 notification was not sent to the Health and Safety Executive. Now that's a requirement when you are taking on board quite a large project which is going to run over a certain number of working days. So that wasn't sent to the HSE. There were no records of contract management meetings or evidence of weekly site visits to monitor safe practices. There was no risk register, and the construction phase plan, which is again a standard document, wasn't completed by the contractor prior to the work starting, but this was not challenged by those responsible. The corporate health and safety asbestos management policy and property and facilities absence management procedure had not been followed, resulting in the project officer providing the contractor with the wrong asbestos survey information. And that is what led to the health and safety executive inspector issuing a prohibition notice. So I found that the corporate policies, both the corporate overall asbestos management policy, but also the one within the property and facilities team, both are very detailed. They are very clear on what should be done and what process needs to be followed, and yet that hadn't been followed correctly. And overall, there was a lack of management oversight of the project officer's actions. That was another of my findings. Sorry, this is still the same section. So another thing I discovered was that the procurement process was not followed also in respect of having someone to manage the contract, that there should be somebody who is appointed to manage the contract and progress works. But the project officer who had that responsibility had 7 weeks sickness absence during that period, and they were not replaced. There was no one actually appointed to manage in their absence. There is within the council a health and safety compliance officer who raised concerns about the site management, and this was at a point when the project was 2 months behind schedule. The project officer was absent, and although it was reported and individuals went to look at the site, it didn't result, in my view, in sufficient action to robustly manage the contract and get those works back on track. From the 1st of November, 2019, which was the day after the prohibition notice was served, there was a more structured and robust approach to deal with the asbestos effectively, which was the immediate risk, and also to manage the contract more robustly to get that work completed. So I did find evidence of a much more structured and robust approach from that point onwards. The final area I was asked to look at was to explore the impact of the project on Riverside residents. there was evidence of considerable hardship, in my view, which was endured due to the project not completing until February. It should have been running from April till I think end of July or end of August, and instead of that, it didn't. At the point that the prohibition notice was served, it was already, quite some way behind schedule. And so what that meant, of course, was that the residents, instead of having these problems with or intermittent heating and hot water in the summer months, were having to endure it right through the winter. So I felt that there was considerable hardship there. The temporary measures which were put in place, whilst that's better than nothing, they were insufficient to provide enough hot water and heating during the cold winter months, and there was quite a lot of evidence of that happening. I felt that this was particularly of concern because most of the residents are elderly and retired, so therefore they're at home during the day for a large part of the day, and some people also had long-term health issues. So the impact I felt was really quite significant. Again, evidence of residents feeling let down, not cared about, and lied to. Those were that was what I was reported. That was what was reported to me. Honesty in terms of communications and a regular and an approachable presence on site after the 1st of November 19 was welcomed. So I then formed a series of recommendations which fell out of all the evidence which I'd gathered. So a single point for incoming calls from residents concerning hot water and heating issues to avoid those reports getting lost. My suggestion was that they should manage the collated data in a way that allowed management to facilitate the analysis and also allow regular formal review by senior managers. So again, there's that management oversight. I understood while I was doing the report that there was a review into council properties going on, and there were similar commercial type hot water and heating systems, so I recommended they complete that review. Also ensure that the project officer appointed to procure the works and manage contracts suitably qualified, and also that project officers should work more collaboratively from the outset and utilise internal expertise to identify risks and the mitigating actions that they would then put in place. So by that I was referring to using the resources within the organisation, so the health and safety compliance officer, the officer with expertise in asbestos, those who have expertise in equality issues as well, bearing in mind residents are from the broad spectrum of the population, so to make sure that no particular group was disadvantaged. I felt there should, linked to the equality issue perhaps, is that there should be a communications plan tailored to resident specific needs. So there was no attempt made to personalise or tailor the message for those who may have difficulties in receiving things in a general manner. So the time taken to explain things more clearly on an individual basis. To be honest, if problems arise, provide opportunities to explain and respond to the concerns. Continue with the work to deliver a one shared drive for the team and a standard file structure. I found in my investigation there were different systems for sharing documents and so on, and that made the sharing and oversight and colleague challenge more difficult to happen. I also felt there should be quarterly audits of projects, so all the projects that were going on, and they should be looked at and audited by the Health and Safety Compliance Officer and the Asbestos Coordinator. and feedback provided to the project officer and the senior manager. I also felt that those same two individuals with the in-house expertise should conduct unannounced site visits to carry out observations and ensure compliance with council policies and relevant legislation. Overall, tighter project management and governance, and I felt that key stages of projects needed to be formally signed off by the project officer, but importantly checked and countersigned as correct by a senior manager. I felt that to do this, maybe some template documents should be developed to facilitate the process and provide a clear audit trail of robustly managing contracts. And managers at all levels to conduct regular one-to-one meetings to ensure accountability for actions and checking of outputs. And to continue with efforts to create more of a one-team culture across both sites, because members of the team were situated in two different locations, and efforts had already begun to create more of that one-team culture. And so I recommended that continued. And also they'd recently begun practice of project officers checking each other's project folders, including perhaps going on site visits together. So those were my recommendations. I'll just stop presenting now. So I'm not sure if at this point I take questions or whether I do that in the latter section.
Okay, thank you very much, Julie. That was a very detailed report. As far as I'm aware, I'm the vice chairperson. Councillor Wotton has lost contact at the moment. So if it's okay with you, I will, before we throw out questions, can I ask Debbie Roberts from the council to respond, please, with slides, I understand, as to what has been done to date, if that's okay. Debbie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm just uploading them now, Vice Chairman.
Oh, thank you very much.
Can I just confirm that this slideshow also doesn't contain any exempt information because we're still in the public session?
Be back on.
There's a picture.
So Debbie, are you speaking
We'll go
this or
on.
not speaking to this?
Thought it was yourself, Councillor Reid, or Chris.
Okay, thank you very much. So the recommendations of what we've done so far, as you can see, we have a single point for incoming calls for residents concerning hot water and heating issues. Manage the collated data to facilitate the analysis and the regular formal review by senior managers. A complete review into the council properties with similar commercial type hot water and heating systems. Ensure project managers appointed to procure works and manage contracts are suitably qualified. The POs to work more collaboratively from the outset and utilise internal expertise to identify risks and mitigating actions, e.g. health and safety, asbestos and equality. Next slide. So we're going to develop a communications plan tailored to resident specific needs. Be honest, of course, if problems arise, and provide opportunities to explain and respond to concerns. And I have a recommendation for you to consider, Chairman, at the end of this. Continue with work to deliver one shared drive for the team as standard file structure. quarterly audits of projects to be conducted by Health and Safety Compliance Officer and Asbestos Coordinator, and feedback provided to the PO and Senior Manager. Health and Safety Compliance Officer and Asbestos Coordinator to conduct unannounced site visits to carry out observations and ensure compliance with SKDC policies and legislation. Next steps with this report. I would like to suggest, Chairman, that we actually, this is a suggestion for the committee, that we develop a tenants liaison panel. This could be supported by myself, because I'm obviously keen and caring, and with 2 other councillors, and that we could get some details put together so it would be a way of engaging formally with tenants. That's sort of my latest idea, to actually continue to talk, understand and be present, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Reid. I'm now back on Councillor Linda Wootton's iPad, so I just picked up the fact that you've got a further proposal to have a tenants panel, liaison panel. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman, that is. I'm not absolutely sure that you're right. Did you hear that complete recommendation to add or not?
All I've got is the recommendations which are on the report, and the further one is to develop a tenants liaison panel. But if there is another one?
No, that's the one. And the tenants liaison panel would be with the cabinet member and 2 other councillors, and of course to formally engage with tenants.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. Are there any further presenters?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Robert for regarding the tenants liaison group, whether that could be increased to representatives from Grantham, Stamford, Bourne and the Deepings. You get more liaison with a councillor from each area on this liaison group to report better than just 2.
May I respond, Chairman?
Yes, I remember back in 2007 we did have a tenants liaison panel. So will it be a similar sort of panel?
Yes, I believe it would. Well, I don't know about 2007. I'm really sorry. To be perfectly honest, that was a break in my counselling times from Rutland, and I hadn't quite come to South Kesteven then. But what I'm keen on doing is that we could have more than one of these. I'm more keen that they're actually localised, so that they're localised with local members and with the tenants that it's commiserate to. So for Grantham, it would be the Riverside and of course the other projects there. But I'm quite happy, and I think it would be more commiserate and more personal if we actually had one for the other areas separately. To have one collectively for all is a way of making the situation, I think, just a bit too formal. It's a matter of really sort of being on the ground, Chairman, and actually being interactive between what the council functionalities are and our tenants, the people that live in them.
That's a good suggestion. I see that I've got Karen Bradford wishes to speak. Do you still wish to speak, Karen?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just in support of what is being proposed by the Cabinet member. I think it'd be really useful if we look at some good examples of best practice for tenant liaison panel, and how that could be developed, and bring something back as a framework for greater engagement across the whole of the district.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Sarah Trotter, do you have any further speakers from members of the committee?
Yeah, Councillor Rosebery Capri-Brown, which wishes to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for taking over. I can't see my screen fully at the moment, but thank you for that. Councillor Rosebery
Chairman, we can see you.
Councillor Rosebery Capri-Brown. Rosebery, are you there?
Let me just see if I can attempt to unmute her. Bear with me.
I've just unmuted.
Ah, good. Welcome. Welcome,
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I've listened to all of this all afternoon. And we all know that this, as you say, goes back a very long time. Every time we have to discuss this problem and the problems that we've had, and we haven't obviously come up to scratch on any of it. And I think most of us councillors, every council on SKDC will, when they see this report and look at it, will be very ashamed that some of us were not quite aware of how bad it was or whether we could have done anything to help. What I'm going to ask is, can we have in our housing department and repairs department hand-picked staff that are capable of dealing very kindly with the elderly people? And Councillor Reid will know what I mean. We want people that, before they open their mouths and say things to these residents who are complaining, that they put their brain in action first and offer sympathy, because that is what someone needs when they're in such a state, because their heating doesn't work and they are frozen, and it's they're just on the point of, they've probably had damage in the house through flooding or anything. Now, Mr. Chairman, you may think I'm ranting on here, but I'm not. I have said for the last 8 years, when anything about repair programs has come up, I have pointed out, please will you not do anything in elderly persons' properties in the winter. And here we see, presented before us, these repairs were going full swell all through the winter when those people were very, very cold. I don't know the answer to this because I haven't asked before. Did we move these people out while we did the repairs, or did we not? Because I think that is another suggestion we should put on this recommendation, that if anything has to be done to any of the houses, bungalows, whatever, in the winter, we use common sense. Well, no, firstly we use common sense and do it all in the summer, even if we have to employ extra contractors. And secondly, if we do have problems in the winter, we move the people out to somewhere where it is warm. We cannot have elderly people suffering in this way. I have full confidence in Councillor Reid. I absolutely know for certain he will do everything he's promised. But as far as this committee is concerned, and I'm a member of it, I would obviously apologise to these people, but I realise through the recent report that's been given that we were sadly wrong with who we were employing, and the business of not checking on people. I don't think it should be quarterly reports anyway. I think on something like this, people should be reporting back monthly to us. And certainly we should go and do inspections ourselves. Anyway, that's all I want to say, Mr. Chairman. And I was going to say it a lot earlier in the meeting. But anyway, other people had to speak. So please, can we take all this on board? And I've had to fight quite forcefully with the housing department over some of my people that are living in the bungalows in Ancaster and Barkston. And at one time I was told, no, perhaps I better not say that.
No.
Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've said my piece.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Rosemary Caberry-Brown. You made some very good points there, and I'd like Councillor Reid to respond to that, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Could we take the presentation down now, because I think we've done with it. I'm quite happy to speak during that time. I think there is a collection of points that both Councillor Rosemary Caberry-Brown has made, and indeed other councillors. So I think I noticed, Chairman, with respect, you've got several people in the chat box. So what I'd like to suggest is that I listen to those as well, and I'll come back at the end, if I may.
Right, thank you very much indeed. I'd like to go back to Councillor Jackie Smith. Councillor Jackie Smith, are you there?
Oh, God.
Chairman, IT colleagues have been in contact with Councillor Jackie Smith to try and get her able to speak, but they've been unable to reach a solution to that, unfortunately.
Right, thank you. Councillor Sarah Trotter, are there any more members of the committee who wish to speak?
No, there are no more members of the committee. Councillor Whittington made a request very early on in the meeting, so he is next, followed by Bill Dilks and Ashley Baxter.
Right, thank you very much indeed. I'm conscious that we're approaching 3-hour mark and we need to vote.
5 minutes, yeah.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to go to Councillor Whittington first. If it's a quick question, Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we had the report earlier, which sort of highlighted things in general that were going wrong with housing repairs. And I think with the Riverside, we've actually got a really sort of detailed, almost case study of an entire complete failure, really, to sort of address a lot of the concerns over a long period of time. And you know, the thing I find most concerned about it is that senior management only seems to get really involved the day after the HSE published their prohibition notice, and yet that was sort of end of October last year. But certainly the issues around Riverside were being reported at council before then. And certainly in the Grantham Journal a long time before then. So I'm just wondering why. I mean, I'm hoping that our senior managers read the Grantham Journal and attend and listening to full council meetings. So why didn't they become actively involved? It seems only from the 1st of November, following the HSE prohibition notice, when a lot of these problems were evident in the press and been raised in council before then. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. Again, another valid and good point you make. Councillor Reid, would you like to respond to that, please?
Well, I can concur with Councillor Whittington that from the previous item that we've discussed, along with this, there's many correlations between the two. Chairman, I am at a loss as to what has happened in the past. What I can confirm is there has been a change in personnel, a change in management, and I think what has also come out of this now is there's a change in the way of which our housing is reported on, and I think above all, I think the appetite of all councillors is much more concerning that by ways of responsibility, not their responsibility, but in the responsibility between the council and our members in assessment of exactly the management of all units of housing that we actually have. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, shame and blame isn't going to get us anywhere. but I do give you every assurance of working with your committee, with audit and governance, and of course, indeed, with the officer structure as well, and talking to tenants, and like this tenant liaison that we're suggesting, you know, having our ears to the ground. And assessing potential problems as they occur, as well as the vision of a good management style as well.
Thank you very much, Steve. Councillor Reid. Members of the committee, we are approaching now the 3-hour mark. I'm going to propose an extension of 30 minutes. Do I have a seconder?
I second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are all members in favour of 30-minute extension?
Yeah, quite happy with that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. Anyone who is against it?
No, I support you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on then. The next speaker is either Councillor Ashley Baxter or Phil Dilks. Which one is it?
Phil Dilks. Councillor Dilks.
Councillor Dilks, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and may I thank Julie Picken for her report, which is the independent inquiry I called for, members will recall, in the motion I submitted ahead of our full council meeting last December, following an expose in the Grantham Journal highlighting the council's long-term failures to protect our elderly and vulnerable residents at Riverside. The council avoided discussing my motion at the time, thanks to an interesting interpretation of PERDA and the view that my motion might have affected the outcome of the pending general election, as if. Despite not being debated at the time, I'm grateful that at the December meeting last year, the leader of the council agreed to the inquiry I was asking for, which was also called for at that meeting by local resident Mr. Gadd. And I would like to use this opportunity to pay tribute to Mr. Gadd and hope that the committee would too. He first came to our full council meeting almost 2 years ago,
I thought you were going to
and without his persistence and perseverance, I don't think we'd be any farther forward right now, or we may not be. We as a council and our 90 tenants at Riverside, who've put up with this for 4 years, owe him, Mr. Gadd, a debt of gratitude. He only came directly to raise questions at a full council meeting after he'd been working for 2 years trying to get hot water and heating restored, by lobbying local councillors, his MP and the local press. I hear what Robert says, Councillor Reid says about shame and blame won't get us anywhere, but I've got to say without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. Mr. Gadd told us today that he felt he was treated with disdain, given incorrect information. Frankly, from my point of view, seeing what happened to him, he was patronised, patted on the head and sent away. On one occasion, he was actually reassured, for example, not to worry, and I quote the then cabinet member, and actually there have been 3 in the time that he came to the committee, came to full council. The cabinet member told him at the time, "We have the most competent officers working on this." Now, we've learnt from Ms. Picken's report that this clearly wasn't always true. For example, we now know our own project officer wasn't properly qualified. No wonder the inquiry finds that some of the most vulnerable and elderly tenants feel let down and lied to. I note in a joint press statement responding to this report a few days ago, the leader and the chief executive said, quotes, "The issues at Riverside are fully resolved." I understand that this sadly may not be true. So can we please have some honesty and confirm that there are still problems at Riverside that are not fully resolved? I understand some tenants didn't have heating and hot water over the weekend, and that even now, 4 years after these serious issues were discovered, further work is still required. Can I reiterate my comments earlier on the earlier report that what is needed, in my view, is a much wider councillor involvement in the way we as a council provide a housing service. I do welcome the comments. I don't know if they're in response to my earlier comments, but the addition that Councillor Reid added about tenants liaison panels. I think they are important. I think they would be a step forward. And as Councillor Exon said, they don't just need to be for Riverside. We should have local panels that are open, transparent, and should involve local members as well. I would really welcome that as a step forward. I suggest a publicly accountable and open body of elected members and tenants representatives would help promote transparency and restore confidence in the competence of this council in protecting and safety of our tenants. Final point, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Can you confirm that the HSE stop order on asbestos works, I'm asking, have they finished with us yet, the HSE? As in the previous report, I ask, is there a risk or danger of prosecution to the council? And my final point is, I'm not a member of this committee, so I've not seen the exempt report. But before we move into before the committee moves into secret session, could you at least give some indication as to what it concerns? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed.
Can I have a copy, please? Can I have a copy of it? Thank you.
Councillor Reid, would you like to respond to Councillor Dill's final comment?
I'd like to answer two of the well, I'd like to answer one of the points, and I'd like to ask Chris Stratford in a minute to actually give a factual statement about the HSC criteria. What I'd like to share with both Councillor Dilks, the Riverside and everybody else is that the repairs stroke servicing of the heating and hot water system is now fully complete, as has been said. However, there is an upgrade that is required, which I've alluded to earlier, that I am implementing. The way this is going to be implemented will start on the 23rd of November. It will immediately address those tenants, the two tenants, particular Mr. Gadd's brother and another tenant that have had acute problems, but we shall be starting on that day. We will be doing 4 units per day, which will take a rollout of about 5 weeks to completely go through the stock. And that will be, in my opinion, an upgrade, and it will also sort out, well, it won't sort out, it will actually upgrade the facilities for hot water. So that's the answer to where we are. Is Chris Stratford still with us? Can he please give a position statement on where we are with the HSC and the asbestos, please?
Yep.
Can I say thanks, Councillor?
Just to let you know, I'm back on if you can hear me.
Okay, thank you. Chris Stratford, are you there?
Could I just ask Robert just to say, I understand what you're saying. I thank you for that, Robert.
Mr. Dilks, I'm going to Chris Stratford now. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, mine will be a fairly swift and short answer to the question. The HSE haven't finished with us. What we're waiting for is the report that will conclude their findings and the actions they propose to take against the council following the original stop order that they put on the asbestos works at the time that they were involved. Now, we have actually asked several times and chased the HSE for this report. A lot of their work has been delayed because of COVID issues, so we're late in receiving that report, and indeed we were hoping to combine the findings and outcome of that report with the report you have in front of you today, so that we could get all of this problem out of the way in terms of one presentation to members, but unfortunately that's not been possible. I can't tell you what the outcome is yet to be. The HSE clearly has very wide-ranging powers to do what it believes to be appropriate, and it will take the action it believes is necessary in relation to the way that we acted in respect to the management of asbestos at the time. Whether that involves fines, whether that involves prosecution, and they do have the powers to prosecute in certain instances. I don't know, because I've not seen the outcome of that report, but we hope to have that in terms of a very clear indication of what the next steps are with the HSE, hopefully during the month of December. Other than that, I really can't say any more.
Thank you very much indeed. I intend to close this debate at 5:30. I've got two more speakers. The next speaker I'm going to call, Councillor Dilts, is Councillor Jackie Smith.
Well, I would call a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Jackie Smith, please.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can, yes. Go ahead.
Right. I just wanted, as a follow-up to your talk, to say that I agree completely with what you said. It was difficult. I went down there on a number of different occasions to follow up after the emergency work that was taken on the over the Christmas period to get people with more hot and cold water. And for the next couple of years, I was asking quite regularly of staff, of the people that were working there, and of the other contractors to see how things were going, and I was told that on each occasion that everything was going all right, and obviously it wasn't. But you know, I know both Ray and myself worked quite hard over a period, and we're constantly checking. So I think there's you know, and we were really doing it in our capacities as we're both looking after both ward, St Wolfram's ward councillors. So we were obviously looking to see and help as much as we could. But if you're told everything's all right, how can you find out otherwise? If you're told by those that should know, that's it. You just keep on asking questions occasionally and getting told that it's all right. You take it, you trust these people to be telling you the truth. And I think, you know, that's all I'd like to say. But we were constantly looking at it and trying to get answers and we were getting answers, but we didn't know that they were the wrong answers.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Jackie Smith. Councillor Dilts, you made a point of order. Shaheen, our monitor officer, wishes to respond to you. Shaheen.
Oh, Chairman, it was really just to alert you to the fact that...
I can't hear you, Shaheen.
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, it was just to alert you to the fact that a point of order had been called and that Councillor Dilts ought to be brought in before the next speaker.
Yes, I was going to. Yes, thank you. Councillor Dilts, what was your point of order and what part of the Constitution are you referring to?
I don't have the Constitution in front of me, Mr. Chairman. You'd not be surprised to know, but I was... I noticed that all the way through the meeting you were very kindly gone back to questioners and said, does that answer your question? I simply had a point of clarification I wanted to ask Councillor Reid. I wanted to ask him, was he saying that I welcomed his comments. He mentioned, I wanted to ask him, those two tenants that he mentioned, do they currently have adequate hot water and heating, and have they had in the past few days? And on the upgrade that again I welcome, will the hot water and heating have to be turned off? And what are we going to do about that to make sure we have adequate provision to those people during that period? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's a very good question, Councillor Dilts.
I can answer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reid.
Okay, fine. So what has actually happened is it's not that they've gone from having having hot water to having no hot water. It's in the HDUs in these plates, these boxes that the heat exchanges between one supply and the hot water circuit is because they've got silted up over years, is that they really try to fool you, because they start hot and then it goes tepid and then it goes cold. So that's why, to me, I mean, I have this in hotels. There's nothing worse than people coming downstairs and telling you they're either cold or they've got no hot water. And it's exactly the same with these units. So they are the first that we're actually going to change. So I know Phil Gadd's mentioned that they used to have holding tanks before. What happened before, I can't really do a great deal about. But what I'm trying to do is get to a point that I have an assurance that the tenants in the riverside all have hot water all of the time. Now, by having a small storage tank in each unit, and what we're going to do, Phil, is we're going to do the 4, we're going to do a day, and we're going to roll out. But in one of the voids that we're there, we're going to, as quickly as we can, get one of these actually put in, so tenants can see what we're actually doing. So they, and we can talk to them about it. This is what it's all about, isn't it? It's communication. So that's what we're actually going to do, where the hot water, and of course by doing that, as I mentioned earlier, it takes less pressure off the system as a whole when the most amount of heat demand is wanted at very cold times as well. So that's the situation. So now that answers the first question. Sorry, what was the second one?
Councillor Dukes, did you have another question?
Well, it was simply, have they been without hot water and or adequate hot water and heating over the past few days?
Well, as to the best of my knowledge, no, they haven't been without. It's just that it's inadequate, and it starts hot and then it's tepid, and then it's because their particular unit to their own unit supply, it just sort of peters out. It's the most frustrating thing. It's a system, to me, I'm only too pleased to move on from.
If I can, Chair, I can provide a little bit more information about one of the residents, if that would be helpful.
Yes, the other.
Without mentioning names, thank you.
Yes, indeed. One of the residents that we were concerned about has particular medical challenges and issues. He was feeling that he needed some additional heat as it reduced in the way that Robert had just explained. So we actually provided additional heat for him, and indeed paid the overcost of that heat for the 48 hours that he needed that, so that we were sure that his medical conditions were not being impacted adversely.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got one more speaker.
Thanks, Chris, both for that clarification. Appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Dukes. Thank you. I've got one more speaker, Councillor Ashley Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased that Jackie was able to say, or Councillor Smith was able to say about her experience of trying to intervene as a local councillor and being fobbed off. I mean, not even feeling fobbed off, but actually being fobbed off, told that everything was all right when it wasn't. I mean, there should have been a clue when Mr. Gadd and others kept coming back to the council to say this has not been sorted out. With respect to Robert, I appreciate the work that Robert has done on this and other issues since he took the portfolio, but I'm not really buying this idea that year 0 was when Robert Reid was appointed, and that everything else before that is irrelevant and ancient history. It isn't.
Ashley, can you just say that again? It's all.
I beg your pardon. I'm not buying the idea.
Oh.
Sorry. In fact, I'll try turning my video off. That might help.
Yeah.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
You can, yes. And your question is, please?
Yeah, I'm not buying the idea that year 0 was when Robert Reid was appointed and that everything before that was irrelevant. So I'd like to ask, first of all, why is the exempt report exempt? I can't see anything in it that is that should be hidden from the public, possibly some job titles. Can we please publish the independent report with redactions if necessary at the earliest opportunity? I've just read through it. I only got it today. I can't see any reason why it shouldn't be in the public domain. Can I ask Councillor Reid why it has taken... I mean, I congratulate Julie Picken on completing the report, which was commissioned in January and finished in March. I recognise that we've had a COVID lockdown, but why has it taken from January to November to actually publish it? Why has it taken from March to November to publish this report? Why has it taken so long? Can I ask Julie Picken, what could we have done differently as elected members? We're all frustrated with this, and there's a lot of mention of the competence or otherwise of our officers, but as elected members or even as portfolio holders, what could we have done differently to make it work better? The other question to Julie Picken is, are there any budget implications? Was any of this about money, or was it all about management? And finally, can I ask, I'm not sure who to ask, but have we considered the use of solar water heaters to assist the heating system as a supplementary source of heat, solar water heaters? That's all my questions, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Julie, my apologies, but I lost contact with you whilst you were doing your presentation, so please accept my apologies. Do you wish to answer Councillor Baxter's questions?
I can certainly answer the first two. The third one I'm not qualified to answer. In terms of the question about what else could councillors have done, that wasn't part of my remit, that wasn't part of the scope of the inquiry. So really what you've been discussing today in terms of governance and being able to verify what's happening, I would suggest is probably a matter for yourselves rather than myself. I didn't actually look into the role of the councillors. That wasn't part of it. So I'm sorry, I can't really answer that one very helpfully. In terms of the second question about budget implications, throughout the inquiry, money wasn't. I don't recall money being mentioned. There was no. Oh, we didn't do that because we didn't have enough money. That was never an issue that was raised with me as a reason for anything not being done.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. Could I just ask Shaheen regarding our exempt paper? Is there a possibility that it could be published redacted?
Chairman, there are certain aspects of that report that I think could be in the public domain, but in the main, it focuses on something that is properly exempt, and I don't really want to say too much in this open part, but there may be some facts.
For the exemption, could you give the reasons why it's exempt?
Yes, it's in connection with the identification of an individual.
Good, that's fine. Thank you very much. Councillor Baxter, I'm going to ask you if you want to come back because we've got about 9 minutes left.
Yes, and I'd like to come back to the questions that haven't been answered yet. One is why did it take so long to get from the receipt of the report in March to the publication of the report, albeit exempt, in November? Why have we been sitting? And secondly, does anybody know if we have considered solar water heater as a supplementary source of heat?
And I can answer.
Councillor Reid.
Okay. Hello again, Ashley. The first knowledge I had of the report being in receipt of the council was in September. Now, if it had been with the council before September, I am sorry, I had monitored along the way that we were awaiting its findings. I can't answer what has happened in the mechanism. Well,
paragraph 1 of the report says it was completed in March.
No, it was completed in March, but I don't think the report was received by the council in March. Not that I know of.
Could Julie clarify?
When you say received by the council, I completed it and sent it in to the person who'd commissioned me.
In March?
In March, yes.
Well, I can't answer between March and September. I can only say that it is with an officer that's no longer with the council. I can't answer any more than that. Well, I can answer is that since September, I've been on the case, and before we got this report, I was already on the case. As far as the other question is concerned, as to heating, we are looking into alternative sources of heating. So, solar, yes. A heat pump is another idea, and of course biomass boilers is another source of heating, but of course they need ventilation, and I don't know whether it's in a controlled zone in the Riverside for that, but we are looking and exploring other methods of producing both hot water and heating, not just at this particular site, but across the authorities' commitment.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Reid. I'd like to ask a final question. Can you tell me what percentage of residents were affected at Riverside, if you know?
Are you asking me that question?
No, Councillor Reid.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's not a problem. I honestly don't know the number of residents that were affected. What I can tell you is that one resident is too many.
Right, and on that, I wish to thank Julie for her presentation and thank all the presenters.
Could you answer that question, Mr. Chairman? Could Julie answer that question?
If she knows the answer.
I don't know the precise percentage. The general impression I got was that some residents were more adversely affected than others because of either.
You are correct on that.
I'm sorry?
You are correct on that.
Yeah,
some were more adversely affected than others, yeah.
Yeah, some were affected much more severely than others, but my understanding was that nobody ever mentioned any residents that hadn't been impacted, put it that way. So I think all were to some degree, but some perhaps more severely than others.
Right, thank you very much for that. I'm now going to close the debate and refer members to page 71 of the recommendations. And the recommendations are: 1, that the committee notes the recommendations contained in the attached independent consultants report and requests that officers be required to update this committee on progress to achieve full implementation of the recommendations on a quarterly basis. 2, the committee notes that the HSE report dealing with potential breaches relating to the management of asbestos and the carrying out of Riverside hot water and heating repairs should be submitted to the committee once received. 3, develop tenants liaison panel cabinet back as soon as possible. I propose that we accept those recommendations. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Exton. Thank you very much indeed. We will now go to the vote. The vote is for, against or abstain. Zena, over to you.
Councillor Ray Wootton.
For.
Councillor Sarah Trotter.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cabery-Brown.
For.
Councillor Philip Knowles.
For.
Councillor Amanda Wheeler. Oh, sorry, she's left the meeting earlier on, I think. And Councillor Linda Wootton.
For.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Before I close the meeting, I'm going to go back to the Chief Executive for a final word. Chief Executive.
She's gone.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, I was just struggling there to get the video on. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Chris, for the information that is shared today. And as a number of questions that Councillor Baxter has asked there, if I can just hopefully add a little bit more information. I understand that the report was received by the team from the independent inspector. They were wanting to present the report with the HSE report, but of course we then did go into a lockdown period, so there was a delay. However, the delay was for too long, and that report did sit with certain officers before, as Robert said, it was brought to our attentions. And in support of what Shaheen has just said about the pink papers Any members can request pink papers. So Councillor Dilks and Councillor Baxter, if you do want copies of pink papers as members of council, you can request those. But it does contain officers' names, contractor names, members of the public. So that is why the decision was taken to keep that in pink and restricted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Can I take members back to item 10, which I missed, the work programme? It's just for noting only. And with that, may I thank everybody for the presenters, the members, the councillors, the officers for their presentations today. It's been a long day, but a worthwhile day. And at 5:30, I therefore close the meeting. Can I ask you to press the red button when you leave? Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Chairman. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.